to the Apex Legends qualifier for EMEA for the Esports World Cup. Today, our teams will be fighting for one spot to compete this summer in Riyadh. It's going to be a massive competition that our teams are going to be doing their absolute best to try to be a part of. I can't wait to see what happens here today. My name is Glitter Explosion, and I'll be one half of the people walking you through all of the action here today, which means joining me, we have the literal best in the biz, Dan Gaskin. How excited are you for the games today?
Very excited. We've already seen all of the other regions have their spots in qualification, but we still have one more for EMEA. And the fact it's only one spot is unbelievable because there are some incredible teams competing today. We've already seen big teams eliminated in just the earlier stages, so this is going to be an exciting lobby for sure.
Yeah, we've been keeping up with all of the matches as we've been kind of getting towards this final stage of the qualifier. And like you said, lots of recognizable teams that have gone out, but still even more have made their way through to this final stage. So we'll have to see which one will be able to claim that single solitary spot in the competition. Now, there's lots that we've got going on here today. We need to start breaking some things down for you. And first and foremost, that's the fact that the Apex community is new to the Esports World Cup. So if everybody at home, if you're wondering what this competition is all about, well, we've got a quick video to break it all down for you. Well, I mean, you guys saw it there for yourselves. Literal life-changing amounts of money. 8 weeks of competition, 20 different titles, $60 million on the line, Gaskin. I mean, this is an insane competition.
I love it. It reminds me of, real sports, like 8 weeks of competition. I think that, your television sets, your Twitch streams, your whatever streams are going to be constantly on as you will be following the biggest, the best teams, your favorite players all around the world competing in Riyadh. And it's going to be unbelievable. And for that amount of money, I mean, this, as you say, life-changing amount of money for a lot of these players competing. It's
going to be an insanely exciting summer, jam-packed with esports. I can't wait to see how all of it goes. Let's take a look deeper, though, into the format of EWC so you guys can even better understand how this is all going to work, okay? Now, when it comes to this, we've got 32 invited teams based on that split one Pro League placement. And then, of course, there's still those 8 available spots, those teams fighting to qualify via this current online route. That's what we're trying to do here for EMEA, Dan.
Yeah, and then once we've got through all of these regions and we've got our qualifiers, we get to the Esports World Cup. The group stages will be across Thursday and Friday. We get 40 teams, 2 groups of 20, 10 maps per group. So instead of what we've seen today, we've only had 4 maps throughout the group stages, a lot more competition to try and get those points on the board for both eliminations and placement points. 1st to 9th, they'll progress to the final stage. 10th to 19th will drop the last chance. 20th place gets eliminated. And that moves us then to Friday, where we will see that last chance stage. So another opportunity for players to get into that grand final on Saturday. 20 teams, match point, pure, unadulterated Apex action.
It's going to be so exciting this summer when this all gets to that final moment. But we mentioned it, there's $60 million on the line. Well, what does that mean for Apex Legends? That means $2 million specifically for Apex here. First place going home with $600,000. I mean, this is an incredible prize pool, all the way down to 10th place, still taking home a really, really nice amount of money here for these teams, Dan.
Yeah, everyone at the Esports World Cup competing in Apex Legends will get prize money as long as you get to the Esports World Cup. So the qualifiers today, essentially, if you win this EMEA qualifier, you are guaranteeing yourself top 40 and at least $2,000 that you can see there. So that's what it's on the line today. But of course, that $2,000 can very quickly increase more and more the further you get to the competition. And maybe, just maybe, that's $600,000 for first place.
Man, I cannot wait to see what happens when we get to that stage. Which team is able to not only claim the prize pool, but then also raise that trophy. This is another global competition, and it's a competition unlike any that we have seen so far. And what I mean when we say that is because there's also an aspect of EWC that is the club competition aspect. Well, if you don't know what that means or how the clubs will be competing, just check this out.
$60 million!
You've been seeing that a lot, right? What does it all mean, though? Here's my friend Alex Machine Richardson to help explain.
So, 60 mil, 20 tournaments, 8 weeks. You probably already know. But how does a club prove themselves to be the very best in the world? That is where the Esports World Cup Club Championship comes in.
The Club Championship is where things really heat up. $20 million awarded to the top 16 clubs, with the newly crowned best club in the world awarded an astonishing $7 million.
Wait, so how does that actually work?
It's simple. We've got 20 tournaments. In each tournament, the top 8 teams get awarded points towards their club championship total. The higher you place, the more points you get. Now, these points are worth the same in all titles, so it is important to not put all of your eggs in one basket. But it's important to remember that the club champion needs to win at least one individual game tournament.
Nice, so we'll probably be seeing clubs trying to qualify across a range of games to have the best chance of getting their hands on $7 million.
Yeah, man, there's your incentive. More clubs, across more games, more competition.
And so the race begins. This summer, we will crown the best esports club in the world.
I mean, this is truly a unique competitive experience. You saw there July 3rd through August 25th. And at the end of it all, not only will we have crowned multiple individual title champions, but at the end of it all, one club will be the best in the world. Dan, I am so excited for this summer.
I'm still trying to work out where Machine was, because honestly, that place looks great as well. I want to go to the pool, have a barbecue, get in the sauna. Sounds like a great time with those two. But yeah, it's unbelievable, really, what we're going to be seeing with the Esports World Cup. And one thing I touched upon in that video, or I saw them touch upon, was the fact that a team or a club has to win at least one tournament to be crowned the club champion. So you can't just be consistent across the board, getting third, fourth, third. You need someone to actually win. So you need to be sending the biggest, the best teams. And that's why we've seen organizations find some of the best players to send into certain games. And Apex could be that game to get one of these clubs that title.
I think it gives fans a really cool opportunity to support their favorite organizations, and then also potentially be exposed to esports that they haven't really gotten a chance to deep dive yet. And we might be seeing some new fandoms here, specifically in the Apex Legends community. But now that you all at home know how all of this works, the big picture of everything, let's start talking about today. Okay, we've said it a couple times. It's our qualifier here for EMEA. How does this specifically work? Well, right now we're in the finals, okay, but everything that's been going on before that was our group stage into the semifinals. Now they've made it here, Dan, and one team, like we said, from EMEA will make their way through.
Yeah, so 20 teams have already made it into the finals, and we have lost a few notable teams as well that I'll go into a little bit later. 6 maps, you might be used to that in ALGS, but we are going to be seeing World's Edge and Stormpoint as match 1 and 2. Stormpoint will be 3 and 4, and then World's Edge and Stormpoint again as match 5 and 6. And those are kind of the redemption maps, really. If you haven't been able to find your consistency in 1 through 4, you get a chance to replay those maps once more in a slightly different format than you might be used to if you are a constant watcher of Apex Legends esports. Then the top teams, and it is only going to be one team from EMEA that will advance to the World Cup in Riyadh.
And you'll notice there that it's obviously not just EMEA. We've got a few other regions that will also be fighting to qualify through, and some of those have concluded, one of them being APAC North. And we wanted to call this one out specifically because we talk about it in Apex Legends all the time, just how close these competitions can be. Well, APAC North had 2 spots. Fennel and 14 Lost did claim them, but it was only 1 point that separated second and third place, Gaskin. It's always so painful when that happens.
Oh, it's brutal, isn't it? And you can imagine that those final games were extremely exciting for all the teams competing and those who were lucky enough to be watching them as well. Because it's not match point, remember, that we are going to be seeing in these finals. It is just about accumulative points across 6 matches. And sadly for Thai, they were eliminated. But it does mean we get to see both Fennel and 14 Lost at the Esports World Cup. Fennel aside, who have been consistent in APAC North. We have seen them in the top 5 various times throughout qualifiers, throughout pro leagues, etc. But we haven't really seen them as much on the international stage. But this will be their opportunity to play against international competition in Riyadh.
Yeah, we saw what happened in our Split 1 playoffs and what APAC in general can bring to the stage. So this will be exciting to see what we can see out of APAC North now when it comes to the Esports World Cup. But speaking of the rest of the regions that have completed their qualifiers, we also got APAC South's winner out of Lightning Unicorn, and then we just got to watch yesterday North America, and it was Nocturnal and Tripods who were able to claim those 2 available NA spots, and they were also the final 2 teams in the last match going up against each other. I mean, it was a really, really good day for NA.
It was a slow burner to get into it, but then we got some incredible action between some of the biggest and best teams competing in North America, who will now join the invited teams that we mentioned earlier from Pro League. 2 very deserving teams as well. I mean, you speak about Tripods and their journey getting into Pro League only a few months ago in the last game throughout the PLQ, and now finding themselves at the Esports World Cup. It has been an unbelievable time for them.
Yeah, it's been really exciting so far. We still obviously have EMEA and I believe South America still get those qualifiers done as well. So a few more squads that we're going to be looking for when it comes to the Apex Legends side of things. I think once it's all said and done, combining the invited squads and who we're seeing qualify through, we're in for a real treat at EWC. Along the way, if anybody at home, if you're keeping up with the competition and you want to kind of start tweeting at us with hashtag Esports World Cup, use that on social media and start letting us know your thoughts as we get closer to the competition, because we want to know who you think is going to be taking that home, as well as here specifically who's going to be doing well in EMEA. You could use hashtag Road to Riyadh so you can let us know, is going to be one of your favorites team? Is it going to be an underdog? Is it going to be somebody we're going to talk about in a little bit? I mean, I need to know all of your thoughts, and I don't want to get into it too soon because we've got quite a few teams to talk about, Dan. We'll pull them up for the participating squads. It was a very, very close semifinals round. There were tiebreakers to get into this finals, but at the end of it all, lots of recognizable names appear on the screen.
Yeah, sadly, we did see a few teams disappear in the earlier rounds. And as you mentioned, tiebreaker, we saw Go Next eliminated in the semi-final purely on a tiebreaker. That was Kashira's squad. So that really shows how brutal these qualifiers have been, how difficult it has been to get into this final. And sadly, having to say goodbye to some players that have been right at the very top of Apex Legends esports, but will not be competing in this final. And we still have to narrow these 20 down to just 1. Now, we are going to be seeing a lot of Team Phoenix, Team Nisa, Team Denze, and you might know some of these players and some of the orgs that they might be representing, some of the teams they play under, but their team might just be under one player's name depending on who registered here today. But some big teams certainly competing, and I'm very excited to see who is going to be able to take this one, Lauren.
Yeah, I think that if the previous regions or even just the previous levels of this qualification competition are going to be any indication, we could be in for some very, very close back and forth with our matches. I think that if you think you know how it's going to play out, you could be wrong after what we saw so far. I think a couple of the teams, like you mentioned, really names that we've seen before. We've got Taskmaster on Red Dragon and Co. One of the teams that we were watching through the semifinals that I also do I know you want to give a shout out there, is Cold, because they did phenomenally in their semifinals. And tell us a little bit about that roster.
Yeah, Cold featuring Graceful, who we have seen not only compete, but also he's been talent on the desk as well, alongside JMW and a Counter-Strike legend, Forest, is also competing. They actually played in a Nordic Cup only a couple of weeks ago, and they were able to qualify for a LAN event, and they are now competing here to try and qualify for the Esports World Cup, and I think that's incredible. Counter-Strike also featuring in the Esports World Cup, by the way, but Forest, a living legend, competing back in the day on NIP, and they have been sublime, actually, to say the least. Finding a victory in the semi-finals as well to show that they really can be competitive. So I think that's a team we have to keep an eye on today, because Graceful at the helm, we know what an incredible IGL he is. And if you put someone who can deal damage like Forest on your squad, and JMW, who also we've seen at the very tippy top of Apex Legends, yeah, that's a team that could qualify for Riyadh for sure.
Yeah, I know. I'm always so excited when Graceful does well, because I want him to do well in the competition, but I also do love when we're able to get him on the desk with those pros every time we kind of bring a new person in to hang out with us, because they do such a good job. But not only that, we've also got the likes of K Swinney. We've gotten, like you mentioned, we're going to see the names of the players as the name of the team, but you'll see Team Miscom, which you'll recognize as 202. You'll see Cybercats in there. So there's going to be quite a few squads that you guys should know if you've been following along with ALGS. You mentioned Team Phoenix as well, Gaskin. That's Forge, or you guys would have previously seen them playing as Forge. So as long as you guys have been following along with any of the competition, you should be able to know who you've got here. But if you're new, joining us just for EWC, that's fantastic as well. So welcome, and hopefully you're prepared to enjoy some serious competition back and forth here for the EMEA region. And one of the things that I'm actually excited for with EMEA, and we talk about this a lot off camera too, Gaston, because we saw it yesterday in NA when it comes to the meta for Team Cops. People using lots of Bangalore, lots of Bloodhound, lots of Catalyst. But in EMEA, sometimes we get a little bit more variety, and that's one of my favorite things about this region. I want to see some different legends here.
EMEA is, in the best way, very unhinged when it comes to their selection of legends. They like to do things a little bit different. They like to be a bit brave. However, when it comes to qualification and only one spot on the line, I wonder whether maybe some of that bravery might just be kind of tittled down a little bit, where people start to say, okay, we have to actually put our best foot forward here and play a composition that we know is working, because we only have 6 matches to do so. When we usually watch Apex in its finest form in ALGS, there is weeks and weeks of competition, of learning how teams are going to play, of how rotations are going to work, yada, yada, yada. Whereas now you have to learn and you have to play on the fly. You're going to be learning this lobby straight away, but you only have 6 maps to do so. So really, you've got to be playing something that's consistent. One thing I will say about EMEA is we do have certain teams and certain players who are very comfortable on certain legends that aren't necessarily meta. We have seen things start to fly in. I mean, Caustic slightly fallen out of the meta a little bit compared to what we have seen most recently, but still a legend that will be played. I imagine will be played today as well, because comfort. Some teams like to just drop back a little bit, take a building, take some space, and make teams come to them. They feel a lot safer doing so. We also might see Watson teams doing the same thing, because even though Catalyst is very popular right now for some of the biggest and best teams, there's some teams who just haven't played enough Catalyst. And if you're not good with Catalyst and you don't know how to use the Dark Veil, her wall properly, you just find yourself in a bad situation. So instead, you'd rather play in a more comfortable scenario.
Obviously also taking into account the maps that our teams are going to be playing on. So we'll take a look at the schedule, like you mentioned earlier, Dan, when we were taking a look at the format. The map schedule is going to be a little bit different than what you're used to if you're used to that ALGS formula side of things. But for now, we're going to be starting our first 2 matches off on World's Edge. Then we'll do 2 on Storm Point. And then that kind of redemption map opportunity if they don't fare so well on Storm Point, and they typically do better. We're back to World's Edge for map 5, back to Storm Point for match 6. And I think this is actually an interesting way to kind of shake things up.
A very interesting way, and a perfect way to start off today's competition on World's Edge. If you are new to Apex, which I imagine a lot of you watching have been watching for quite some time, World's Edge is Apex Legends. It has been the go-to map for competitive Apex Legends since the launch of the game, and I cannot wait to see what it does, because a lot of these teams They know what's on the line here. I mentioned it earlier. A qualification spot for the Esports World Cup, guaranteed $2,000, but most importantly, a shot at $600,000 for first place. That is life-changing amounts of money for a lot of these teams, and I'm sure they are going to be extremely nervous going into it.
You know, another thing that I love about the Esports World Cup is the fact that this is just another opportunity for our Apex teams to compete on that global stage. I mean, if you think about it, they only get to do that 3 times a year, right? And this is not only another opportunity, but there's a different avenue for that qualification, different opportunities for our teams to get through. We've seen in every region so far, like you even mentioned, we were talking about APAC North, this could be an opportunity for teams that have previously not managed to make their way through to a global stage. This is their moment to do it, and I am so excited to see what this brings to the overall competitive scene, whether that is new players making a name for themselves, players like we just talked about for Cold and Forest coming over from other titles and potentially starting a whole other reign. I don't know, but it's really exciting.
Certainly will bring a lot of other fans to watch the game as well. I think that's very exciting, but these guys will have the chance to join those who are already qualified, the likes of 07, Passion UA, 2R1C, Omit, Made in Heaven, Alliance, Na'Vi, and Aurora from EMEA were invited from their placements in Split 1 of ALGS. So now we'll have one more squad, and we will find out as we jump into World's Edge here for match number 1.
All right, everybody, I hope you are prepared to get into it because the dropship, it looks like it's ready to go. Match number 1 is getting underway. Our players are dropping, and it'll be interesting to see how this first match is handled on behalf of some of our teams. We can see POI is being split already as our players are making their way down to start looting and get into all of the action.
Yeah, worth noting that we're not using the draft POI system that is going to be introduced to the ALGS. It is going to be traditional, old-school Apex Legends, everyone diving out of the dropship and competing for those POIs. I'm looking across to see whether we have any contests, but at the moment, everyone pretty spread out, and we can have a quick look at Cold dropping over towards Landslide, and they are going to be alone. The only potential contest we might have is over towards Geyser and Lava Siphon. Speaking of, there is the first contest. It's already gone down, and it is going to be Team K Swinny who are able to get the job done just off screen there. Bryn, very healthy as the Bloodhound. Looks like a lot of the damage was done elsewhere. K Swinny getting it done.
That was a really strong start for Team K Swinny. Not only clearing out this space, securing themselves a lot of loot, but kind of starting momentum off early and hopefully nailing down some points for themselves. They had a strong semifinals run as well, and Lava Siphon also is going to be a really solid POI. You can just see on the mini map there for positioning for them with how close they are to that next circle, so they can really take their time here and figure out the exact pathing they want to take when it comes to those evos.
And these are going to be all the teams competing today. Apologies, the graphic we had earlier had a few of the teams missing, but these are the correct teams who are going to be fighting and duking it out here in this final to qualify for the Esports World Cup. And there you can have an indication of where we're going with the circle. So it is going to be just probably south of Fragment up towards that choke. A very difficult place to try and have a competition really between teams, but down at Geyser, this was the other area I was saying a potential contest, and they are having a scrap here, Lauren.
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to really utilize this choke, but before we can even really get into it, Team Miscom, aka 202, they do go down to Stay Healthy, who now claim Geyser, have that choke, all of the loot at their disposal, and another team goes out very early on in match number 1.
And that's, you know, a very disappointing scenario to be in, especially when you've only got 6 matches to try and put points on the board. You have already fallen behind the competition, and it's a sad reality that your backs are against the wall after losing a contest in match number 1. And another reason why contests can be so detrimental to you. But now, do you try and continue with those contests? Do you continue dropping over towards Geyser and Lava Siphon, or do you try somewhere else here? And that's why winning a contest in that first match is equally as important as it is scary for the other squad. Team K-Swinny, they've dominated and now own Lava Siphon, arguably one of the best POIs on World's Edge. So they're now going to have the freedom to dominate that POI, loot it freely, and maybe get it for free next game if they manage to scare that team away.
This upgrade will do nicely.
We got a chance for a second there to see Kazakh running through one of those chokes that you were talking about where this potential next ring can go. Now we're checking in with Team Thorfinn. Everyone trying to really focus right now on trying to get that information where they're going to need to be rotating through and getting themselves at least evoed up to a comfortable position. Team Thorfinn are down there with Team Horizon in the general vicinity, so they will also have to be keeping their eyes open for that. Meanwhile, we got Kazakh going down in the kill feed. Atlas finding themselves in a little bit of a scrap here.
Yeah, it's going to be a fight just in Fragment at the moment, and this could be a big fight to win as well, to try and dominate this area of the map, because then you have the northern side, but you have to be careful. A lot of other teams are going to be hearing this and arriving and looking to try and use this as an opportunity to rotate themselves into Fragment. So you don't want to overcommit to a fight, or you have to do it very quickly and make sure you have the ability to do so. Now, Atlas, they have the Caustic, a great character, a great legend for resetting fights, but it looks like they're a little bit concerned about other teams in the area, so they're just going to back off for now.
And honestly, it's going to be a smart play, because right now the amount of teams coming down from the north side trying to push in and get a little bit of real estate very early is going to be pretty high. You can see everybody on this building, whether that's the top floor, somewhere in the middle, and lots of action going on across the street as well. This is an opportunity for some of these teams to really stabilize and not have to push anything they don't have to. Meanwhile, Team Kazakh does end up going down in the kill feed. They had lost one early, so that was kind of inevitable with how many squads are in the general vicinity. But now Thorfinn back on board with them, down in stacks. This was Horizon in the area. Like I had mentioned, they find themselves in a little bit of a back and forth with one knock, but should be able to stick this. That lifeline is going to be so clutch for these types of situations.
Yeah, lifeline massive in the meta right now, and is up to purple. So if they select that on their particular opportunity, they can have the chance to get up to red and also get the gold knockdown. This is a tough fight because there is going to be, of course, the extra factor of fighting in the ring here. But again, having those heals and maybe having that lifeline could help out a little bit later. But being back up to a full 3, now they're looking to try and get aggressive and try and maybe pick off one of these players.
Thorfinn wrapping around trying to do work with that Elstar. Not a lot of ammo left at his disposal and taking lots of damage from the Bangalore ult. ASCII cleaning up King Victor, at least. Team Thorfinn trying to keep themselves alive, and they managed to own this space and now have to at least try and make a safe rotation away from here. Team Horizon opting to back off and not want to be one of those other early squads going down.
Yeah, just one member of Team Horizon able to survive and get away. All the meanwhile, over towards where the circle is probably going to be heading, Team K-Swinny have been taking a lot of space over towards the choke that we had spoke of, but they've actually drifted away from the choke to really try and grief players that were coming from the train tracks, because they recognize they might be able to pick up an extra bit of KP and get extra damage to level up those evos. Still looking to be aggressive at the moment. As you can see on the map overhead, they are focusing on that western side of the circle, and it will continue to pull that way. So those teams who were in Fragment on that right eastern side, they're going to have to move a little bit later.
Honestly, Team K-Swinny's in a really solid position right now. They're going to be able to gatekeep people through that choke. A lot of the teams, you can see even Team J Hanzo opting to be a little bit safer and go for a wider rotate, see if they can maybe pick up some loot along the way. Team Clemmy G trying to rotate down on that southwest side, which means they will be trying to go through that choke. As we see the next ring, though, it's going to be really tough for Team K-Swinny to fight off everyone who's going to be looking their direction, knowing that they have one of the best positions for that circle.
One of the benefits, Team K-Swinny is playing Caustic as well. I mean, we mentioned it at the top of the show, Caustic will feature a lot of comfort on Caustic, especially on World's Edge. I feel like Caustic is at his prime and really can help in a lot of these building situations. Maybe not as much Watson as NA has shown, and not as much Catalyst as NA has shown as well. So it is going to be more of the gassy boys trying to compete with one another. So once you get a few Caustics in the lobby, you start to get more Caustics, because to counter Caustic, sometimes you need a Caustic. You need someone else who can run through that gas unaffected. And it does like change that lobby so much when everyone starts to get a gassy boy on their side. Still, at the moment, though, 16 squads remain. Plenty of playable space in this current circle, but when Ring 3 closes, that's when a lot of these teams are going to be forced out of a lot of these buildings. As Team Taxington, they're down to 2, but they do have the banner, so maybe they can get back up to a full 3 if they have a mobile res.
Team Taxington being one of those teams that did really well in semis and first place overall, now just down to a 2, trying to stay alive in the middle of all of that chaos. They have teams pretty much at every angle that they do have to worry about. So we'll have to see what they're able to do just as a duo. Meanwhile, checking in with DN over at Landslide, potentially finding themselves in a little bit of an engagement here as they are trying to see if they can safely push through those train tracks that Team K Swinney was doing a really good job gatekeeping people on.
Yeah, but you can see they're going to be shot from height and forced into said tunnel, and as you mentioned, it's not going to be pretty on the other side either. DN might be able to just potentially hold inside of the train tracks, but then they might get sandwiched here, and perhaps this was the plan here for Zidane and Jay Savage and the rest of the team, who now can follow up. They can shadow. They've got the ability to scan with Bloodhound, and now they can get involved in this fight. Got a little bit, they're going to be a little bit worried about the Watson and having to deal with the fences and potential gens coming down, but you can see grenades now flying out. They're confident there's no gen they have to worry about. They're being really aggressive.
This is probably the only option they really had as well. There's not a lot of time to make an even wider rotate, and they will try to clean this up as quickly as possible so they don't draw too much attention to themselves. This Bloodhound ultimate is doing work for them right now with all of the information, knowing exactly where he can push to try and do the damage. They do lose one. Now down to just a solo on Jay Savage. Is he going to be able to clutch up and use these barrels to his advantage?
Jay Savage definitely can get it done. It's a 1v1 now. And he's got the Vault, and he is actually shredding with said Vault, and he will get the job done. DN eliminated. Will they get the chance to reset? It looks like they will. No one else in the area. So in a 1 versus 2, I'd always trust Jay Savage to get the job done. And now they can manage to get back up on their feet. They will dominate the train tracks, and their aggression, it does pay off, albeit looking a little bit dicey when the Bloodhound went down. As now Team K Swinney, they were listening to all this, and you can see on the map, they're kind of looking towards the train tracks, saying, should we get involved? But they'll now realize that circle-wise, they probably have to start thinking about where they're going to go next. They won't know that the circle's going to be moving north that we can see on our screen because they haven't had the ability to get a ring console scan. So at the moment, they're just going to be taking space and confident in their position until the next zone comes in and gives them that info.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Red Dragon was also just fighting Team Faco over in their POI on top of that building. So they were able to claim one of the only options, really, that all of these other teams are going to start pushing in, trying to take different floors on. So that was a huge win for Red Dragon while all of that action was going down over by the train tracks. Meanwhile, still checking in with Team Thorfinn, who is in no rush. They've been working the outside of this zone the whole time, doing a pretty good job playing the edge. They are going to potentially have to push through either Team J Hanzo or go through the other choke and then run into even more squads. So this is a fight that they need to make work in their favor sooner rather than later, because they also only have 18 seconds before everything starts to collapse.
Yeah, one of the downsides of playing an Edge Lifeline team is then what do you do and how do you get past teams? Are you going to be able to just use a balloon to get over at the top of someone? But they'll probably end up having to take a fight, just as Team Phoenix in the moment. They'll be on this one choke against Team J Hanzo. You can see Team Horizon also eliminated in the kill feed. Finally, they did get back up to a full 3, but then as they pushed into the zone, they were taken in. As Team Phoenix, they have the ability to get the scan. The catwall is also down at the moment as a potential escape route, but there is going to be aggression coming out of Team J Hanzo, and this should open up for Team Thorfinn to come from behind here and join in this engagement.
This is going to be a rough pinch for Team J Hanzo. I mean, Team Phoenix is doing a really good job doing whatever damage they need to do. Don't want to take too much unnecessary additional damage from the ring. Team Thorfinn pushing through, trying to make this quick straight into Team Phoenix. Thorfinn down to 2, as Thorfinn himself is the one that's knocked. ASCII and Robin trying to do the best they can, but it's just too much to deal with between the ring and trying to fight everybody at this point of the game, Dan. Everybody down except one on Team Phoenix, and it's Phoenix himself.
Of course, who else but Phoenix from Team Phoenix able to survive that absolute massacre that we just saw on the southeast side going through that choke. And again, that's the downside of playing the Edge in the Lifeline team, and the fact they got held up by Team Horizon really damaged their rotation. They were able to go out with a little bit of extra damage, a couple of extra kills at least, but now we get to focus on those teams who were able to make the early rotations. Team Saxington, yes, they're okay for now, but they're going to have to move in 55 seconds. You mentioned Red Dragon. They're in the prime position. They're in the prime building, that old construction building that used to be the streamer building. That's where everyone's going to be competing for. But right now, these teams on the eastern side all have to move at the same time, and that's where we're getting scraps.
Team Taxington were down to a 2 at one point, so they were at least able to get a little bit of a reset here, find themselves in another back and forth and lose the Bangalore. Then goes the Watson. It's Atlas pushing in to try to clean this up. Nice shots on behalf of Atlas to take out Team Taxington and give themselves a little bit of space here on the eastern side of the zone.
Patience rewarded as well for Atlas. I mean, we followed them earlier when they were trying to get aggressive on teams, but they realized that there was too many other squads in the area. They wait, they bide their time, and they pick their opponents apart there, really, in a perfect manner. Now we get a map overhead to see just where these squads are. We mentioned Red Dragon, right, slam bam in the middle of the zone. They should be pretty good for a top 5 here, if not even further, depending if other teams try and challenge them. But elsewhere, you've got the constant scrap of teams trying to force themselves into the zone now. Team Clemmy doing really well. Team Clemmy, by the way, were the squad that eliminated Go Next on tiebreaker early in the semi-finals, so we'll keep a keen eye on how they do as we now look across to the train tracks once more.
And that was the Bangalore ult coming out of the team from train tracks, if I'm not mistaken, trying to at least zone off Team K-Swinny as they were forced to make a move out into the open. Team K-Swinny were just waiting, though, to do this damage. You've got Beast of the Hunt popped, shields are getting cracked, and they're able to back off while being a real thorn in the side of that squad. They don't want to fight for too long here, though, because they also don't want to die to the rings. They're trying to move up while dealing damage, knowing that there's still another team on the other side of the tracks that they had tried to fight even earlier on in the match. So this is just going to devolve into chaos. You've got so many other teams pushing up, trying to see if they can potentially third party this and own this side of the zone.
Yeah, you got 4 teams here on this southwest side. Atlas have now joined all the way from the east now to the southwest, and they are in a fantastic spot on these train tracks where they can really add a lot of damage. Their main concern is teams like Red Dragon and Team Clemmy, who can kind of watch over them right now. So they just need to be a little bit careful, have to try and use the ridge line of that train track just so they can kind of head glitch a little bit and not show too much of their body so they can just stay alive. But Red Dragon can do a lot of damage from the position they're in. Now, one team we haven't really spoke about because they've been quietly going about their business is Team Cold. They're on the northern side and hold a really good spot right now to potentially push in and compete with the likes of Red Dragon.
I like that point you just made. That's actually really solid. They have drawn zero attention to their side of the zone, and they've played very patiently. I think it's going to reward them right now because all of the action seems to continue happening on the southern edge, whether that's by the tracks or Atlas still hiding behind the rock. I mean, Red Dragon has also done a really good job keeping everybody away from their space up until this moment. They were running a little bit of a 2-1 split with somebody scouting as well, so that was benefiting them when it came to at least knowing where they could try and do some damage. Meanwhile, GSC down in the kill feed at the hands of Team Clemmy, who are trying to move in from the east, and they kind of own that one edge, and now it might be Cold's opportunity to try to clean this up.
Yeah, Cold can kind of play the train tracks for now, and then we'll have to move in from the north. You can just see JMW on your screen there. They are making their way through, but I mean, the likes of Red Dragon on Reds, a typical Taskmaster fashion of playing in a game of Apex Legends. They're so good at farming Evos, and they now are rewarded with a top 5. So down to our squads that can try and compete for a victory here. Red Dragon being probably our primary focus, just with the position they've been able to find themselves in, and the shields they have. Playing the Fuse, by the way, which is going to be very good for griefing a lot of these squads who are on the edge. You can see one's already gone down. That's Forest. So Cold weren't quite able to move from the northern side. They were spotted out.
As Cold tried to survive in that corner, the scans for Red Dragon are providing them with a lot of information for how they want to play this next fight. They do decide to drop down on Team K-Swinny, do a lot of damage through the window, and Team K-Swinny go down. This is so much more opportunity for Red Dragon to continue holding this.
This is Red Dragon at their peak. They know exactly when to be looking and engaging in fights, but also when to disengage and get back into one of these better spots that they can hold. They don't want to overcommit things, but they do want to continue to show presence, to continue to show damage, to keep people away and keep people weak, to try and encourage fights happening between other sides so that eventually they can just clean things up. Now you can see Cold are still alive. Graceful and JMW as a 2 have lost the CS Legend in Forest, but we've already seen in the semi-finals today, they were able to win a game as a 2, so it is not unachievable here for Cold, albeit a little bit unlikely with the position that Red Dragon find themselves in. But the circle is going to be pulling outside of the building, so Atlas and Team Clemmy certainly have an opportunity depending on where they put themselves, but they've lost one on their way in.
That was going to be a risky push no matter what. They tried to see if they can maybe obscure some of the vision, but now they're in the crosshairs of multiple teams. Red Dragon still able to sit inside this building, and they will be able to continue to do so for quite some time. Like you said, the Fuse is just griefing so many of these teams trying to move in and at least claim a little bit of safe space. Cold, now the next squad that's trying to do exactly that. They run into Team Clemmy, who does go down, but Red Dragon dropped down instantly outside, clean up Cold, and now we're down to our top 2.
Get Johnny Cash on the radio because now Fuse ult's gone down. Atlas, though, are in a spot where they can get involved in this, and of course, the caustic gas could change things, but sadly, Thor's fallen. Now they're just a 2, and Red Dragon, they are falling together. All of them as one, as they get the victory as well. It surely was just lined up for them right from when they found that building. Red Dragon, an unbelievable performance here in match number 1. They had the red evos, they had the position, and they played it perfectly together.
There was an opportunity potentially there if Atlas wasn't on the opposite side of that building to maybe do something after Red Dragon had pushed out and cleaned up Cold, but Red Dragon was inseparable. Like you said, they were just deathballing there at the end, making sure that they were taking home that first match, and that was a masterclass on zone prediction and teamwork in those final moments from Red Dragon. I mean, very, very well played for match number 1.
Not only that, but the amount of kills they were picking up as well. I think they finished with about 14 kills in the end. So it's going to be a massive game for them, a 26-point game for them in the end. And when we look at, who's going to be qualifying for the Esports World Cup, 26 points is going to be very significant at the very end of it. So we'll have a look at those stats just for confirmation of how the teams did and see whether I was correct. 14 kills in the end, plus a victory. Red Dragon, unbelievable game and a very well played one. I loved how they were all pushing together. They all trusted in one another. Even at the end when they'd taken a significant amount of damage, still pushing and dealing damage, knowing that even if one of you gets knocked, you've done what you need to do as a player to get that initial damage so that your team can clean things up.
I mean, we're seeing some decent KP out of the other teams as well. Like you mentioned, Cold definitely quieter and slower. They just kind of tried to play positionally that entire time, only ending up with 2 KP, but 10 to Team Clemmy. So this will be a really strong start for some of these teams. I want to take a look back at those final circle moments, so see if we can get a little bit of clarity on just how perfect Red Dragon really was, because not only did they fend off K-Swinny on that bottom floor so that they continued to own this building for the entire final moments, but like you pointed out, the Fuse was annoying everybody on the edge. It was Team Clemmy who tried to push in first, and they ran into Cold along the way, and that was a perfect opportunity for Red Dragon to make their move out and get rid of both squads.
And I like Red Dragon being proactive as well, not sitting in the building and allowing everyone else to do something. Instead, they had the Evos, they had the weapons, and they did the damage. Their only worry was going to be Atlas, but the amount of damage this team outputs and the way they push together is so good to watch. If you ever want to learn of how to push as a team, Red Dragon is one of the best squads to actually go back, study their VODs, because they trust each other so much and their target focus is incredible.
Yeah, and we'll see match 1 results here now. Like you were saying, 26-point match number 1 for Red Dragon is going to be setting themselves up so well moving into the next 5 matches. But Atlas Atlas also had a really strong match, and part of it was because of that crazy wide swing we watched them make when they tried to third party all of those fights going on over by the train tracks. It ended up paying off for them as they were able to stay alive all the way until second place for those final moments, and lots of KP out of Team Clemmy. So, I mean, not a bad showing here for quite a few of these squads.
I think it's important that these teams, when they recognize they are in a good position, in an advantageous one with shields, with weapons, that they actually utilize it, get those kills, get those points when they are available to you. Because there will be games where the zone might not pull your way. You might not get as good a rotation. You might not get those evos. We can look at the bottom 10 as well of those results just to see who maybe struggled a little bit in those early stages. But these teams that are picking up huge amount of kills, the ones who are taking the risks, they're going to be the ones that are more likely to find themselves at the Esports World Cup.
And some of the points here on the second page were the result of two really early contests that we saw, one at the hands of K20 and Lava Siphon. So then there's also the question of, if you start off that slow, knowing that there's only 6 matches here to try and get that qualification spot, will we see that happen again? Will they continue to fight for that POI, or will those teams back off and see if they can maybe find somewhere a little bit safer to play from?
Well, this is where either your coach or yourself needs to have a little quick look back at the VOD and say, okay, where actually can we drop? Is there an area that is free of a POI? Is there a team that perhaps is struggling as well that maybe we can drop on instead of trying to take on someone at Lava Siphon who, like Team K20, who look like they're very good at fighting and they perform well in that game with 8 kills. Not really a team you want to be competing with off the drop. But we know that Apex Legends players can be very stubborn, and perhaps we might see the same contest. So we'll have to see what goes down.
Well, before we see what happens, we're going to send it to a short break, give our players a little bit of a little reset before we get into match number 2. So don't go anywhere. You're watching the Esports World Cup. Welcome back to the Apex Legends Esports World Cup qualifier for EMEA. Match number 1 is in the books, which means it's time to just keep things going, getting straight into match number 2, because it was a quick match number 1, an efficient, decisive, fantastic performance out of Red Dragon, who closed that one out and put themselves in such a solid spot already in the overall, if you think about it, Dan.
Vintage Red Dragon, vintage Taskmaster. It's something we've seen for years, and I think that ever since we saw the changes of how the Evo Shield works and the rotations you can make now with the Evo Harvesters and the ability to level those up, it just really benefits a team like Red Dragon, who can just play it absolutely perfectly, looking to try and find as much Evo as possible before they make their way into zone, and they found themselves in one of the prime positions. But there's no time to wait around. We are into map 2. It is going to be World's Edge yet again here before we go over to Storm Point. And of course, our eyes are going to be heavily focused over towards Lava Siphon.
Be interesting to see what our teams decide to do here. It looks like we might be seeing the same contest, K-Swinny at Lava Siphon. Already getting a knock onto 1 here. Team Faco going up against him. You know, we were wondering how it was going to play out. Right now, Team K-Sweaty look like they don't want to have any other option other than the one where they are the winners.
Yeah, it's a 2 versus 1 now, and they should be able to just clean this one up. They just want to play this one a little bit carefully because there is one more team in the area. It is not just a direct 3v3 here. Team Miscam have decided they want to drop over towards Lava Siphon as well. So Team K-Swinny, they didn't overcommit because now they know there's another team that's going to be joining them, and now you've got to use your triple take in the best way possible. Maybe, though, you have to run if you're Bryn. This is going to be a tough one. This is not an area you want to be if you're Team K-Swinny.
The absolute chaos that's happening right now. I mean, really, really strong decision to try and take advantage of this out of Team Miscam here, who really did not get punished that much for trying to push in and see if they could get involved in the fight whatsoever. Right now, every team has taken damage or lost one and then kind of backed off. You can see how low K-Swinny was when he had to leave that situation. You were wondering what was going to happen for Bryn there. You've got Team Miscam fully healthy now, though, and they kind of have pushed their way safely in to Lava Siphon. They can own this loot. Like you were mentioning earlier, it's such a strong POI. K-Swinny will get out, but now he's alone.
And what's crazy is Geyser was just completely left unattended, by the way. No one dropped Geyser in the end. Miscam said, well, you know, if there's a contest happening at Lava Siphon, and it was a direct contest as well. What was happening was the teams were dropping on one another and they were scrapping toe-to-toe. They said, look, we're just going to take this fight, and then whoever wins gets the entire POI. Well, Miscam, they saw that happening and said, well, maybe we just drop on the other side, wait a little bit, we join, and we reap the rewards. And that they did. Now, you are going to be able to see other teams now making their way through the rest of the map. Team Thorfinn down in that southeast, they might have to fight against Team Horizon yet again. It could ruin their rotation and the speed of which, because they are going to have to move, because we're heading up north. We're going a little bit further north this time, up towards Monument and the surrounding areas, and there are a few teams that have already found home. Atlas and Cold and Team Phoenix are already in Monument.
Cold, a team that did well for themselves when it came to their placement in the first match, opting to play really passively and see what they could do with their positioning, only ending up with 2 KP, but 9 points overall after their placement. They're definitely going to look to get a little bit more aggressive if they can here after seeing what Red Dragon were able to bring to the table, but will they even have an opportunity to do that, as they are currently going back and forth, a little ring around the rosy here for this fight.
And going up against Catalyst team as well, so kind of boarded in with those cap blockades on the door, but Cold will be running the Watson that they've done very well with so far today. Oh, JMW's taking a lot of damage, and that might just indicate a push here.
You can see they were anticipating it, waiting to see if there was going to be a move made. But because it's not just one team in the area, there are quite a few teams here. I think everyone's a little bit hesitant to make that first move up, preferring to see if they could third party some of this chaos. The scan comes down on behalf of Phoenix, and they try to see if they can move up a bit. You see those teams running across the street as well. And the worst part about this is that the longer they drag this out, the more teams that are going to start looking their direction.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's on edge a little bit after the 26-point game from Red Dragon, because that sets the pace a little bit. You know, they're sprinting at the front of the pack and everyone else was just happily jogging, but now suddenly you have to start to catch up Red Dragon a little bit. So people are a bit more antsy. They do want to try and pick up some more KP because they realize if you just play placement and get a couple of kills, it's not going to get you to the Esports World Cup. You need to be having those bigger games to try and compete with some of the biggest and best teams here. But Cold and Team Phoenix are both playing a composition that is going to benefit from a team pushing them, right? You've got the Catalyst that allows you just to slow things down, or you've got the Watson that allows you to slow things down. So neither team have necessarily the ability to get aggressive on one another right now, and it has ended up as a bit of a standoff as we refocus our attention back down towards Lava Siphon, as Team Miscam, after that third party, have been able to reap the rewards of just being able to loot up, albeit might not have been able to pick up the kills that they maybe expected, but they were able to get at least a POI, as the remainder of Team K Swinney is just hiding. It is K Swinney just ratting, trying to do what he can to survive and maybe get some points.
You can see Team Miscam there too, opting to go a little bit wider, go through Geyser, like you mentioned, no one there, so at least a safe route to try and rotate through, but also should put them in the path of quite a few Evo Harvesters as they move towards the next ring. So that could be an opportunity for them to really level up those shields and be prepared to fight some of these other squads that have moved in super early towards that Epi Monument area of things. Team Clemmy, though, a squad that we got to watch a lot in that first match, finding themselves far west here over towards that Lava Fissure countdown area. They were trying to do a little bit of damage, but as that ring continues to close on them, they opt to make a move through. And now we're back on board with Cold, that team on the low ground. Like you mentioned, so far those Watson fences definitely being a deterrent to anybody trying to make a move in. But this is going to be one of those situations where if anyone has any sort of an advantage, they might try to press it.
Yeah, it's a really weird fight. And you've got to be constantly on your toes because that suddenly another team could send it on you. So you can't just relax and start thinking about the zone. You need to be always checking your P's and Q's and making sure you're watching your backside, because otherwise another team suddenly gets involved and you'll find yourself being eliminated in potentially 19th place. But you can see a lot of these teams now in Monument have found a home. Team Taxington all on purples. They're going to be able to reside in this building. They could also join in on potential damage in some of the other buildings as well. And I can count almost, what, 8 teams that are all in Monument, and suddenly those buildings start to run out, and you're going to get teams that will be arriving from the eastern side and the northeastern side, like Red Dragon, for example, who will try and force their way into the zone here, and maybe will having not just a friendly knock on the door, but they might be booting that door down to try and join you.
But you can see where that next shift is going to go and which teams are going to be in a better position now if they do have that information, and who will have to move. Red Dragon no longer finding themselves in the perfect central zone spot. They're going to be playing edge, and they'll also be near quite a few squads by that survey camp epicenter area. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with their pathing here. They do have Team Bambino off to the side, who is looking in their direction right now. They know that Red Dragon is in that area, and they do have the right type of team comp that if they wanted to be annoying, they really could.
I feel like Bambino want to get the Evo Harvester that was ahead so that they can get everyone up to blue, but maybe just with the damage, it might push them up to purple, excuse me, from blue. And Red Dragon's not really the team you want to be fighting against, but they might not know that. Although you should presume, if you've been looking at the drop spots of where everyone's been going, Red Dragon has been dropping at Climatizer, so you would be able to make that assumption. If anyone is rotating from that way, probably is going to be Red Dragon. Now, Team Clemmy, I kind of like this position. If they can dominate this western side, you can hold this choke, and you are going to be in a really good spot for the final circle, which might pull over towards train tracks. It's going to be a big pull when it does happen, but now you can see other teams are also going to be in the area to potentially take that fight. Team J Hanzo are going to arrive to this one shortly as well, so J Savage and Zidane need to be careful. They need to be aware, but they do have the caustic barrels down to protect themselves.
There's not a lot of cover here for these squads to be playing with, and as they continue going back and forth, more and more teams are coming through, whether that's on a late rotate or whether it's some of the squads that now have a position on that western edge and they can kind of hear all of the action going down in the choke, making a move. Meanwhile, Team Miscom down to just 2-1-0 shields. Bren trying to do what he can with this Havoc. Miscom in a really, really rough spot right now. Will he be able to do much here using this knockdown shield to his advantage? Also trying to see if he can get these heals off, giving himself a decent amount of time, able to get the battery, trying to clean this up, close this out, and get out of this area. The alternator doing what it can, but Miscom does go down in the final moments. That was a tough fight.
A really tough fight, and it's Team Horizon in the end who come out on top. Again, it's another southeast fight, which means they're going to have to rotate late and compete with the zone. As now Team Thorfinn are trying to dive their way in, really to center zone here, but Thorfinn's gone down, so now it's just a matter of can you reset? Can you get him back on his feet? You do have ASCII on the lifeline, so now you've got the ability to do a little tippy-tap, but no tippy-tap allowed. Denied by Young Hong Kong there, and that's what you've got to do against lifeline teams. You have to deny that res as soon as possible. Don't allow them to get back on that feet, especially presuming they've been able to get that gold knockdown shield, so they would be rezzed with half health. And now Team Carlos are going to be able to do a lot of damage from this position.
You know, they've been holding this spot for quite some time, and they were looking the way of the choke when everybody started fighting right outside of the tunnel. They were kind of being annoying. You saw Young Hong Kong shutting down any sort of res opportunities, and they've been doing a good job zoning everybody around them. They're only down to worrying about Team Clemmy and everyone else that's coming in from the east, but the people on the east in those buildings have to worry about each other as well. You can see just how little space they're going to have to play with in this next ring, and there's quite a few teams that have managed to stay alive on the western edge that could really spoil anyone who starts fighting with people moving in from Monument.
This was why I was saying that that western side was such a good position to be holding for some of these teams, because I was expecting the circle to pull a little bit further west, and now it means that Team Clemmy are in a spot at least where they can, if they hold the area, be, in the late game. But now all these teams on the eastern side and northern side, Bambino, they're going to have to try and drop down from the north. And they're going to have to force themselves through teams that have been holding Monument for a long time as well. Actually, the 8 teams that are currently in Monument and have been there since the start of the game all have to move at the same time. So the decision has to be for your squad. Do you try and move first and potentially get shot in the back by everyone out of those windows? Or do you move a little bit later and just try and pick up some KP? Or is it somewhere in the middle? Because likelihood is, if you move too early, you're not going to win the game. If you move too late, you're not going to win the game. You have to find that sweet spot, but sometimes all it requires is just holding out and waiting and hoping that someone else kind of blinks first.
This is that calm before the storm here, as all of the teams, like you were just mentioning, decide the perfect timing to start making their move in. Everybody in Monument is still safe for now, so they can try and maybe get some KP on the late rotators on the eastern side if they can catch a team out moving in as this next zone collapses. Red Dragon is one of those teams on the outskirts right now. Still, though, all on purples and have a relatively safe path in front of them. They've got a little bit of building cover that they can work with, but they're gonna have to figure out their next move because they won't have much time before the next circle shrinks down. Meanwhile, Team Kazakh down to 2, trying to hold their position and fend off Team Bambino, who has opted to stay slow on that northern side and move down, and it's put them in a pretty solid position, only having a few teams in that general area.
Trigger discipline on the Ring of Fire, opting not to use it this time. At the moment, Bambino, they say actually it could be a bit more useful later on. Sometimes you want to use it just to gain information or to clean up a kill or deny the ability for teams to actually run away and retreat, but instead just going to hold on to it. As now all those teams and all these teams in Monument will get that information. They are going to have to move to the western side. Red Dragon, they've lost Taskmaster, one of the main damage dealers, but might be able to get back on their feet if they're given the opportunity to do so. You can see how they're not just straight away going for that res. They are looking around to see if they get pushed, utilizing the knockdown shield as best as they can as well for that extra little bit of cover. This is a rough spot for Red Dragon.
They are surrounded by so many other teams. There was even one split off from Team Karusha trying to see if maybe they could clean up a kill here or there, but Red Dragon are doing so well in the middle of all of this chaos. They were able to get that res, but instantly the re-knock comes out. Trying to see if they can survive any of this, but Atlas drops down on them in the perfect opportunity. Up close, Kraber, Red Dragon does go down, and that was massive out of Atlas.
I mean, Atlas having the Bloodhound in Beast of the Hunt when all the smokes were down, it just allowed them to get aggressive and push in. They did lose one though, and are they going to have time to get him back on their feet? Because the zone is now coming in. Will they be punished for that push? But this is what I was talking about. When you are in Monument now, you have to make a decision of when you move and be prepared of, are you just going to go for kills here? Because the likelihood of winning this game from this spot is so low because there's too many teams in the area. Cold are going to be one of the next teams now that are probably going to fall because of this. The Watson Fences are going to be the demise of Graceful, it would seem, as he can't even get into the zone. 4 teams just eliminated at the same time from this eastern side. Now we're down to 8 squads here, Glitter.
And we knew that was going to be a rough push in from those buildings as well. Everybody opting to leave at the same time and at the last minute, and they all are punished for it. Team Phoenix is the next to go down in the kill feed as well. Meanwhile, Team Bambino now own that entire eastern side, since all of the teams that were in Monument have died. They've got these loot boxes at their disposal, and they're looking up at Team Carlos, who's been in such a solid position the entire time. And the squads that you were talking about earlier, Gaskin, the ones that were kind of holding the western backside of that rock, have not had to deal with any of this chaos, have safely moved in through those 2 chokes because no one was looking at them. And now we're down to our top 5.
Yeah, actually, there's going to be a big fight that could potentially happen on the northern side, and the winner of that will own a lot of space. But I like the position of Bambino as well under this bridge. It gives them a good amount of cover, but they are aware of another team that are certainly nearby at the moment. Just poking, just prodding, trying to initiate maybe damage from a couple of other teams. Because again, when you're in this top 5, when you're in this scenario, you know full well, as soon as you deal damage, another team could just instantly jump on you, as now Bambino will be jumped on. It's Team Carlos out of nowhere, and will take them down. We're down to 4 squads.
You know, I was going to say this was a really risky push for Team Carlos, who've held a decent position the entire time, but they knew they couldn't leave Team Bambino there for too long. And it was the right time with no one near them. GSC and Team Kiner up here are fighting of their own accord. Team Kiner go down. GSC are still alive. Meanwhile, Team Karusha has been hanging out, waiting at the rock for somebody to do something. We're down to top 3 to get a reset here for GSC, but this will be all down to the person who makes that first move.
And that was the northern fight I was talking about that could have happened, but it just happened a little bit too late for both teams, because now the zone's at their back and they're going to be watched by the other 2 squads who have been able to find better positions because they took too long to take that engagement. Sometimes the downside of not committing to a fight. And now we're going to have Team Karusha and Team Carlos who will hold the 2 primary spots here. And if they can kind of work together to eliminate GSC, we are going to have a straight 3v3 towards the end. But GSC will, of course, do their best to try and survive here and be a nuisance and play their part in this final circle. But it might just be a little bit too late here because the remaining players will fall. It's a straight 3v3 then. Team Carlos are going to be on that eastern side. But at the moment, the high ground is going to be all to Ranchers & Co.
And I mentioned that earlier. That is Cybercats, one of the teams that's under a different name for right now, but a squad you would know as Cybercats. There is a Watson in favor of Team Carlos, but it looks like Cybercats want to push down and see if they can get aggressive here, clean this up. Beast of the Hunt is popped. The shots are coming out of the massive, and the shields are getting cracked left and right. They're down to 2 for Cybercats as they continue this chase onto Team Carlos. Some really solid damage coming out, and Cybercats win match number 2.
And again, I love the aggression from the Cybercats as well. As soon as they did enough damage that they felt they could push, they just launched upon Team Carlos and they full sent it, and they were rewarded with the victory and the position they were able to hold a long time ago. That western side was a big fight right at the very start of the game, just holding that choke point. And now the Cybercats, they get that victory. And importantly, they did see Red Dragon eliminated earlier. So when we talk about Red Dragon kind of setting the pace, they sprinted ahead. But now maybe the Cybercats were just able to grab them by the neck, pull them back in and say, all right, we're going to be in this race as well.
Yeah, that was a really well-played game by quite a few of those squads. I mean, we watched Cybercats be super patient on that western choke area that ended up benefiting them. But Team Carlos, they got into that final circle area really early and did a good job not only of maintaining their space, but they were also another team that got aggressive onto Team Bambino, your 5th place squad, to clear them out, get some more KP, and also own that half of the final circle. I mean, 10 kills apiece there for Cybercats and Team Carlos. That was another really strong showing.
Yeah, that's going to be fantastic for their chances of kind of catching up and qualifying for the Esports World Cup. Red Dragon in 14th position with 3 points. They were our lobby leaders coming into match 2, so suddenly that will close the gap at the top, and that will just demonstrate how tight this is going to be only after 2 matches here.
Well, we'll take a look back at those final moments of match number 2, because we're just seeing these teams willing to force these fights, to go for it. You mentioned that Cybercats had the advantage there with the height, and they absolutely did, but they also weren't afraid to make big, important decisions when they had to. They continued to drop down, continued to do damage, and as soon as GSC was down, they smoke off their vision, and they just go for it.
Yeah, you saw the fuse ult come down as well, and it just kind of trapped their opposition, Team Carlos, in a circle. They got all the information. Of course, you're able to see where they're going to be. Then the Bloodhound ult is also popped by Cleave, and it was just a matter of time, really. Just able to kind of herd cattle at this point. And they certainly were able to reap the rewards of finding the victory alongside 10 kills, and important kills as well, because it will hurtle them up the leaderboards. There's confirmation of just how many points they were able to secure. 22 in the end with the 1st place, but Team Carlos will still be delighted with a 2nd place, 19 points, and GSC, who were able to just sneak their way into that 3rd place, they find themselves on 12.
Yeah, really strong performance. Noticing that we also still had some pretty passive performances out of some of these teams, and after another 20+ point game out of the 1st place squad, I'm going to be looking at some of them to pick it up. You've got Cold there with 2 points, DN with 3, but as we take a look at the 2nd page, I have a feeling that a lot of it was points bunched at the top, but I take that back. Actually, Atlas, Team Horizon, 4 kills apiece, which is not too shabby, and I think that's also a result of the fact that, like you mentioned when we were watching the match, there were 8 freaking teams in Monument, and everybody decided to leave at the same time, and it didn't end up working out for any of them.
I think one of the teams that's going to be most annoyed about those stats is going to be Team K Swinny, dropping down towards Lava Siphon. They got the 2 kills, they were winning their contest, and then their contest sadly was not a straight 3v3. There was another team. Now, we will be moving over to Storm Point, so we're not going to see that contest happen again until potentially later on in match number 5, but this is the lay of the land. Red Dragons still at the very top, 30 points, but they are closely followed by Team Atlas on 23, and you can see how the victory can change things for the Cybercats. They're up into 3rd place, and Team Carlos in 4th on 21.
Yeah, everything's very close right now. 1 point separating 2nd and 3rd, 1 point separating 3rd and 4th. So it is very much so still anybody's game here so far. But that's it for our first 2 World's Edge matches. It's time to send it on over to Storm Point. Before we do that, though, we're going to send it over to another short break. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to the Apex Legends Esports World Cup qualifier for EMEA. We are 2 matches down out of 6 already, which means we're moving off of World's Edge and we are moving in to Storm Point. And after we saw on World's Edge, which was really exciting so far, we saw lots of early game contests, lots of teams being willing to take these mid-game fights in chokes, and just lots of action in general. I can't wait to see what we get out of Storm Point here, Dan.
Lots of caustic as well. More caustic than I thought we would get, but I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, it's EMEA. That's what EMEA do, right? They kind of change things around. They don't necessarily fit the same pattern as we see in some of the other regions where Catalyst is dominated, but now we have Storm Point. We have the change of potential compositions. Certainly Caustic not as good on Storm Point as he is in World's Edge, although can still be very handy. Storm Point, it's locked, it's loaded. It is going to be match 3. Slightly different for those of you guys who are used to watching ALGS, where we would have 3 of World's Edge and then 3 of Storm Point. Instead, it is going to be the change at the 2 point, and we will revisit World's Edge later on. Personally, I think it's pretty cool because it is a chance, as Dia titled it yesterday, as redemption maps, a chance to kind of change things that had happened in those original maps on World's Edge or Storm Point for the likes of K-Swinny, who were contested at Lava Siphon. Will they change things? Well, they'll have 2 matches here on Storm Point to kind of make that decision for them. If they have bad games here, maybe they don't contest later on when they're on World's Edge. If they have good games here, maybe they do. So we'll have to see how it goes. We're in the dropship and we're ready to go for match 3.
And this is going to be an important match as well, because after that second match, we had 2 teams with really standout performances. Red Dragon started off the day incredibly well. And then that was followed by a very strong performance with Cybercats. And we saw just how close second and third to fourth is. And then after like that top 5, it kind of falls off a little bit. Some of our teams have played pretty passively in our first 2 matches. So an opportunity to get aggressive is Storm Point. And as I say that, we jump straight into it. Team Phoenix is out.
Damn, we had a contest right off the drop at Mill. Team Miscom again contesting, and this time it's a different team that is going to be punished for it. That's going to be a frustrating one and a tough pill to swallow for Team Phoenix, as sadly they're going to have to watch the rest of the view just from the spectator mode. But now at least Miscom will be able to at least dominate Mill here and gain this POI. I'm looking across, see it anywhere else up in the northeast. You can see up towards Lightning Rod, the potential of Team Clemmy and Red Dragon. They might fight, and then Atlas are at Zoo Station nearby as well if they hear any commotion. So most of the POIs have been spread pretty evenly, but there are a few teams who are quite close together that after they've looted and booted, they might get involved in a couple of engagements.
That was I mean, before even some of the other squads had landed, Team Miscom win that contest, aka 202. And like you said, now we're watching what Red Dragon decide to do up there at Lightning Rod. Will they try to go for this fight up against Team Clemmy? You mentioned Atlas is up at Zoo Station as well. I think even Team Kazakh is in the general vicinity coming out of Command Center. And this is going to be a spot that Red Dragon might want to try and fight for. I mean, they'll be able to have a decent rotation into the circle when they want it. They'll be able to get their loot, some information in the general vicinity for them as well. So with the aggression that we've seen out of Red Dragon, they might be looking to take it, but if it doesn't happen fast enough, definitely back off.
Yeah, Red Dragon, they're a team who like to take fights when they have an armor advantage. And I think because this is just a straight white v white right now, they're going to try and just get out, maybe go far east here to get even more loot. And Team Clemmy almost dealing enough damage to maybe take down a player there on the Trident. You can see where the zone's going to be going. We're probably going to be heading somewhere between Pylon and Launchpad. Actually, the building that DN are positioning themselves in, we do see circles finishing around that area. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few teams trying to position themselves in that spot. Team Cold right now are trying to land in exactly the same area as DN, so they either are going to have to take this fight or rethink where they want to find themselves.
I do appreciate Cold looking to kind of rotate in here early, though, knowing that it was a potentially risky rotation, that they might get punished for it, but if they can make it work, they could end up with a really good position and some additional loot in this area, because they are one of the squads looking to have a big performance. We've had 2 games out of them where they played really passively. They found a position and held it almost a little bit too long. So if they can figure out a spot that allows them to gatekeep other teams and be able to do some damage, it could be a little bit of a turnaround for their performance here so far.
Yeah, I mean, one big win and you can change everything, right? And some teams do prefer playing that way and like finding a position and then getting the kills later in the end game. So we'll have to see where that happens as Team Bambino now looking to try and pick up the pieces of the fight that has started. You can see ASCII was already taken down on the other side. And a few teams on their rotation here who are trying to be quick to zone have been kind of beaten to the pit. And the fights are outbreaking because of it. Bambino just need to be a little bit careful with their aggression right now because they are trying to fight uphill. Can be very difficult. It's going to be Team Thorfinn on the other side, just as a 2 now retreating.
Definitely the right call to try and get out of that, because I believe Team Carlos is trying to come up on the backside and see if they can go for a little bit of a third party. Team Bambino is able to take out Team Thorfinn. Team Taxington also going out on the kill feed, but Team Carlos is right there in Jurassic, waiting in the wings, seeing if they can maybe do a little bit of poke damage. They do notice that the fight seems to have finished, so they opt to back off, and at the same time they are backing off. GSC are going down. So once again, we're getting lots of very quick aggression out of these teams.
I think looking at this zone, a lot of teams have realized that there's not as much playable space once you get to the latter stages, so they are trying to get into some of the primary positions and having to take those fights, and also catching teams who maybe were a little bit unaware of the rotations being around them. And again, this is one of the things that we were mentioning right at the top of the show. You have to learn and you have to adapt in this lobby, because there wouldn't have been scrims between a lot of these teams. There wouldn't have been practicing of this exact lobby necessarily, so a lot of these teams are kind of going to be surprised by certain positions and rotations that other squads are going to be making, and you have to think on the fly with where you want to be going and how you want to pick up an Evo Harvester or how you want to get into the zone. And the teams that have the more competent IGLs who are better at thinking quickly are probably going to be the more likely to find success today.
We saw that Team Carlos was trying to get this Evo Harvester here to go for the shields. Instead, they end up running into Team Horizon and find themselves now in a back and forth. Nice position there on top of the rock, utilizing those angles, able to take out Team Horizon, and that was something that they absolutely had to do. They want that Evo Harvester. You can see Young Hong Kong heading over there, grabbing that for their shields, as well as getting some KP on the board and clearing out that space. That was huge for Team Carlos.
A lot of big fights being won that can really not only impact this game, but when we look back after match 6 today, they could be the fights that potentially send one of these teams to the Esports World Cup as well. It could come down to just 1 or 2 points, considering how close we've seen in other regions, just a point or 2 separating the qualification spots from the rest of the field. Every fight matters as we get another look of where this circle is and where it's going to be going. So as I mentioned, I think it's probably going to end somewhere between Pylon and Launchpad, even if it is between the choke there. But Cold, they were forced away by Bambino. They had to go a little bit further southeast. Oh, it's going to be shift up north. That is a horrendous shift. And I'm not the only one caught off guard by that. Look at every other team. Stay healthy. Bambino, Cold, K-Swinny, Team Kazakh. They were all banking on it being somewhere else. And the amount of playable space in that circle is atrocious, it must be said. So DN, they're going to be laughing if they even realize it yet. They probably haven't got the ring console scan, so they won't even know yet. A lot of these teams, they're just going to maybe luck out. Team Red Dragon, who are moving from the north, they're probably going to find themselves in that spot because they were able to hit a ring console from Stormcatcher.
Yeah, I was going to say that will be huge information for Red Dragon. They'll be one of the few squads that will also be close enough to get in there early, figure out where they want to hold with the limited amount of space that you were just talking about. DN, I don't even know if they know how good of a spot they have, like you were mentioning, but this is going to be such a chaotic final circle that we'll probably see more of what we've been seeing, where those fights on rotations will start happening. If we see these teams running into each other in a choke, they'll have to start taking that back and forth, and you can see just how southern heavy all of those squads are trying to hold where they can. Even the ones that are playing the edge with Team Miscom down there, finding themselves in a little bit of a back and forth. I mean, The second this starts to shrink down, everyone is going to have a real rude awakening. And when they have to move out, it could be another monument situation all over again.
Great damage there from Jay Hanzo. This is Team Jay Hanzo against Red Dragon. Red Dragon hit the ring console into the survey beacon. So they got ring information, then they got the information of where every other team was. Had Jay Hanzo not been in that spot, they would have had a free rotation into zone, but now they're going to have to fight them elsewhere. Biscom on this southern side, they've got a couple of squads ahead of them as well, so they're going to have to kind of force their way through. It might have to be brute force as well, considering the position they find themselves in. But they might just be able to ignore this one. They don't have to chase this around, but they potentially recognize that this team has their backs against the wall. And a team that's running like this, sometimes you take advantage of their fear. Sometimes you can just say, look, they don't want to take this fight. We can actually back them into a corner where we will have such an advantageous position that we can deal that damage and then continue to push. As now we're getting a lot of these mid-game fights that you were speaking of, Glitter.
All right, it looks like we've got Team Carlos and Team Kiner going up against each other right now. Nice shields here on Zidane. So able to clean up that first kill there as they're trying to see if they can maybe hunt down anybody else. But like you were saying, there's also Jay Hanzo in the area. There's also Red Dragon in the area. Another nice shield crack here with that Hemi. Team Kiner are doing a really good job kind of holding this one particular area. They've pushed everybody out. Atlas is down in the kill feed. They're continuing on this chase because they know they have an advantage, so why not clean up the rest of Team Carlos and free up this space? Now they own the western side through that choke, and no one's really going to be chasing behind them. They just have to worry about anybody else that's rotating towards them.
Sadly for Team Kiner, they don't have ability to scan the ring console to get the information, and actually that might have been the same for Red Dragon earlier as they were moving through. They probably only got the info from the survey beacon, as usually they're playing a more aggressive comp and don't have a ring console character. But the teams that are playing ring console character, like Team Kazakh, for example, if they can get that info, it could be massive for them. But shortly, when this circle pulls in, and all those teams that committed down towards Launchpad and surrounding areas, they're going to realize that this is going to be a pretty hectic final circle, because right now still only DN are the team that are in the next circle after this one. So everyone's going to have to move at a pretty similar time, and you mentioned it could be a monument situation that we saw from map 2 happening all over again. There's now Stay Healthy. They're going to be on this western side. There is a ring console near them, and they do have a catalyst, but it's going to be Team Kiner that you had also previously spoken of. They're going to actually be kind of gatekeeping this ring console a little bit, so that's kind of frustrating for Team Stay Healthy.
They've got Stay Healthy in front of them that they're looking at. They should also have Team Fecco, who might be looking to try and get a third-party situation here behind Stay Healthy and see if they can be the bread in this sandwich. Team Kiner doing a really good job focusing just on this straight-up 3v3. Beast of the Hunt providing lots of information for them as they're able to continuously do some damage. They've got a nice spread here as well, and as you get that top-down look, you can see just where everybody else is. Team Bambino also making a massive move in all of this chaos right now to see if they can clean anything up.
It's because everyone's just got this circle information, everyone realizing they have to move, and hearing this gunfire, it almost allows a rotation where there's distraction. There's also potential for KP, potential to take position off of others as Stay Healthy get eliminated in the end. Team Kiner with an incredible push, great damage from Jay Savage to ensure that they're able to take down that squad. But now Team Bambino will have the potential to take on Team Fecco first, but then it will be Kiner following up afterwards. So this is going to be like a gladiator situation. If you get past one, but then you have to get past a second.
Team Bambino doing their best here with Team Fecco ahead of them. They've done a decent job holding this off and getting that damage in, but you've got Team Miscom, who actually came back towards this way, now looking to get involved right outside of both of these teams on that low ground. Team Fecco down to just 2. Both of the remaining players having weakened shields as well. Team K Swinny goes down in the kill feed, while Team Fecco are down to just their Watson doing what he can with that Havoc, trying to clean up, get these shields healed up just a little bit. Will he have enough time to do that? Lots of loot boxes that he can at least pull a little bit of assistance from. Able to use those knockdown shields, has to make the push because the ring is starting to collapse. Isn't able to get the damage, but does escape before the ring can hit him, but he gets tagged while in the air. Facco goes down, Bambino goes down. It's Team Miscom who are waiting in the wings, able to try and clean some of that up, also potentially have that loot at their disposal, but now they're stuck on the backside of this mountain, Dan, and that is not going to be good for them.
Let's hope that they have a redeploy here. Let's hope they can have an evac tower to potentially go round the mountain, but the circle is going to continue pulling away from those teams who were committing to launchpad earlier. Red Dragon, by the way, have been able to sneak in slowly but surely onto the northern side past Jay Hanzo, who were previously kind of gatekeeping them, and now they can be the ones, the gate kept, become the gatekeepers, and might be taking this fight against Hanzo right now.
Oh, this is a really smart but risky push. They need to clear out their backs so they can own the northern side of this zone, and we've seen Red Dragon do this before. They can take this fight, but that cat wall did kind of back them off a little bit, closing off those lines of sight for them, unable to tell where the players are. The scan does come through as they continue trying to make this push up. Playing from below the rocks, though, is a little bit rough for Red Dragon, but they've got a nice split. This off angle is going to be working for them out of Taskmaster. That was massive.
Wow, I mean, that's such a good push from them. And now elsewhere, Team Kiner, they're in trouble, but it might be paradise for them after the trouble, because they will have the entirety of this western side following up if they can get back up to a full 3, which they will, and they're all on red shields. By the way, Red Dragon, they did get the ring console scan because they had Fuse, and on the skill tree selected the ability to get ring console. So Red Dragon, they can still play their aggressive comp and still get ring console and still get survey beacon. I think we're going to start to see more Fuse crop up and pop up throughout Apex Legends with the ability to get that ring console now, with the addition since the last update on Fuse to get ring console scan. So now Red Dragon will hold the northern side. Cold, all the meanwhile, we saw them move very early. They're going to be on the southern side here. Still no kills to speak about for Cold, but they are into the top 7. They just need one big game to put themselves in contention, really, for a spot of the Esports World Cup. They want to be at the top of that leaderboard. They've been consistent so far, but nothing to scream and shout about. But that one big game could change everything.
I mean, they did well to get out of that, considering how many squads were on that southeast edge of the zone, predicting that that's where it's going to be. So Cold, at least finding themselves in a solid position after moving out of their. Red Dragon now has set their sights on Team Kiner, the last remaining team on the western edge of this circle, and seeing what they can do there. But DN go down in the kill feed while we check back in with Cold. You were talking about them needing to get some kills. This could be an opportunity here as they're looking to get a little bit aggressive and seeing if they can clear anybody out in front of them. Forest does go down. Cold now just a duo, seeing if they can maybe escape that Arc Star, able to do that. But also, there's just so many other teams looking their direction. You have Cybercats, you got Team Kazakh, all looking the way of Cold, and they have to try and survive.
Yeah, Graceful and JMW trying to hold off Kazakh at the moment as a 2. They have forced them into the red, which will do a lot of damage, but sadly, Kazakh, they were able to just find Forest crawling around the corner there and got that information, but Forest still crawling, still giving information here to Graceful and JMW. This is still doable. Team Kazakh, they're taking their time here. Sweet time, but it might be worth it as eventually they drop down. Yes, okay, they went out with a bang, did Cold. They were able to get one down, but it's probably not going to be rewarded unless we see another team just able to clean things up here. But Team Kazakh are able to eventually pick up the kills as Team Red Dragon, they own this circle. They own the entire circle here. Are we going to see another victory for Red Dragon here, which would make it their 2nd out of 3 and really put them at the front of this race for a spot at the Esports World Cup?
They've got a great spread for themselves as well, so that they can see a little bit of everything, the rest of where those teams are. There is one rat for Cybercats trying to stay alive amongst all of this chaos, while Team Kazakh, Team Kiner, and Red Dragon are battling it out. All of these teams trying to own one corner of this triangle here that's kind of this final circle. Red Dragon, though, want to see if they can start something early, doing a good amount of damage here on the teams around them, and they're keeping people away. Team Kazakh have moved really far towards the center of this.
It is not easy to do what Red Dragon are doing. They are owning so much space sheerly with damage. They don't have the legends that can control space, like a Watson, like a Catalyst, like a Caustic. It's all through brute force. It's all through gunplay and positioning right now. And they have to just be careful of Bangalore ultimates coming down around them. But by dealing this damage, they are, of course, making other teams weak, which encourages pushes from the other squads. Now we're down to just 2 teams. It's Team Kaina versus Red Dragon, 3v3. Red shields, though, for Team Kaina. They still have a chance here.
That was another big push out of Red Dragon, though. They made the decision to try and move in. We're down to the last 2. The shots are coming out of Red Dragon. All they have to do is look down and see if they can clean the rest of this up. The Hemlock in the hands of 7 Eyes. Are they going to be able to finish down to just 2 players? Looking for those knocked remaining few. 1 player on Red Dragon against 2 on Team Kiner. Will he be able to do it? Is he going to be able to click? Oh, it's 1v1! Red Dragon close out match number 3, and that is now 2 wins in the hands of Red Dragon, Dan.
So important that Red Dragon just finishing off that player that was getting lifeline res that you said. Yes, I mean, it would have been a 1v2 with the lifeline picking up that player, but Red Dragon intelligently knowing who to prioritize, make sure you shut down the player getting res, deny the lifeline situation, and then in the 1v, I mean, I'd trust anyone from Red Dragon, to be honest, but that's a massive win for them to continue their dominance in this lobby. They were already at the top of the leaderboard, and they are going to be even further so after match 3.
I would be a little concerned if I were some of these other teams after seeing a dominating performance on World's Edge, a dominating performance on Storm Point. And specifically in this Storm Point, there were multiple situations that Red Dragon found themselves in that they could have easily lost, and they were somehow able to fight their way through some pretty unlucky mid-game fights to then own that top north end. And they made intelligent, aggressive decision after intelligent, aggressive decision. We'll take a look back at that final circle so you can see exactly what we're talking about. But even before the final circle moments, Dan, they had to push one of the teams that was the only other squad in the north of them to clear them out so they could do what they just did.
I mean, this game could have been won right at the start. Remember when Red Dragon had the possibility of being contested at Lightning Rod and they decided to dip out and take the far east and get loot? They then intelligently got up to blue, got the ability to scan the ring console with Fuse, played it slow, got the ring console information, then they got the survey beacon information, then they got up to purples, then that led to getting a couple of them up to reds just through damage and the fights that they were able to take. Now, in this scenario, look, he notices there's a lifeline. He sees the tap and he says, I have to make sure I deny that instantly, and he does. That would have been the 1v2. Instead, he makes it a 1v1 here, and then aggression sometimes is the perfect chance when you notice that there's a bat or a phoenix being popped and the havoc just rings out through Storm Point and ensures that they get a victory, and not just any victory, it's a big kill one as well. 9 kills on the board for Red Dragon, 21 points to continue their dominance in this lobby.
Talk about consistency here on behalf of Red Dragon. To be fair, we have to give credit to Team Kiner as well. 10 kills for 19 points. They are absolutely chasing down Red Dragon right now, not making it easy for them to hold that first place spot. And we even saw some decent KP out of Team Kazakh. I mean, this was a much more spread out game because, and you mentioned it while we were watching, teams started to realize just how little playable area there was going to be in that final circle, and everybody started taking some earlier fights.
It was really big to gain the information of where that circle was moving for anyone who had ring console information. We can look at page 2 and the teams that sadly saw their demise a little bit earlier on. Team Phoenix, we actually didn't even get to see that fight in the end. It was so quick happening before we got out of the dropship. They ended on 0 points. And you mentioned it. Teams are going to start to fall behind. We can look at how the overall standings look at the moment after 3 matches. Red Dragon now lead the way, 51 points. They are creating a gap here, Glitter.
I mean, that's a little bit of a rough gap after only 3 matches as well for somebody to try and close. We're halfway through the entire competition here for our Esports World Cup qualifiers in EMEA, and Red Dragon are looking comfortable. And you can see that a large part of that is the fact that they've been so aggressive. Yes, they've also been insanely consistent with their placement, but 26 kills to the next highest being 15 in Team Kiner. I mean, they have just been a slaying machine. And right now, I feel feel like it's going to be down to people stopping Red Dragon's snowball in order to even have an opportunity to catch back up.
A 19-point lead after 3 matches is incredible. And remember, only one team can qualify here from the EMEA qualifiers to get to the Esports World Cup. So Red Dragon, they're in prime position right now.
Well, we're going to keep things moving as we get ready to head into match number 4. Before we do, though, it's time for another short break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Apex Legends Esports World Cup qualifier for EMEA. We are already halfway through the competition, and it has been an insane day so far and an insane performance out of Red Dragon, who is currently dominating the competition, Dan.
Yeah, just the way that Red Dragon play ever since we had the update of how the Evo Shields changed and how they can manipulate and maneuver their way around the map. They just do it so incredibly well. And yeah, okay, they've had good positions in the final circles, but that's mainly because they took their time, they took the right fights, they got the ring console scans, and they got that information when it was required. And now they are in prime position at the moment. They're in the driving seat for that spot at the Esports World Cup.
Well, if you guys are just joining us and you don't know what we're talking about, we'll run you through our story so far, because we've mentioned it. Match number 1 to kick off the day was a doozy, and it was Red Dragon who came out the gates absolutely swinging. They held this final circle position for so long, able to really call that zone very, very well for themselves and keep everybody zoned off. In the end, they ended up going up against Atlas for that final top 2 fight, and they just deathballed. They pushed, they were aggressive, and they've been doing so all day.
They did have an earlier exit in match number 2, though, which gave everyone else in the lobby a little bit of hope. In the end, it was the Cyber Cats who had the height advantage. The Ring of Fire went down. They were able to trap the opposition team, Team Carlos, and in the end, it was just about, well, it's a matter of time of picking up the pieces of the rest of those players just kind of scrapping to try and survive. And even though it was a valiant fight in the end, it was still the Cyber Cats who landed on all 4 feet.
You know, and Cyber Cats actually were able to kind of rat into a decent position in this 3rd match as well. But once again, it was all down to Red Dragon. They have been just doing such a good job as a trio, making the right calls and taking the fights when they need to happen. They cleared out the north half of the zone that they were holding for a really long time, which opened things up and allowed them to make a push here for this final 1v1 to get a 2nd win on the day. And like you said earlier, Dan, that now gives them a 19-point lead over 2nd place. Only 1 spot is available for EMEA, and right now Red Dragon's looking real good.
Yeah, you'd have to imagine that another victory for Red Dragon in any of these 3 remaining games, and it could be enough to send them to the Esports World Cup. That's how far they are ahead of everyone at the moment. But a couple of flops, and suddenly everyone else will start to be able to creep up. It's going to be Storm Point again here on match 4 before we then go back temporarily to World's Edge and we revisit Storm Point once more as a chance of redemption for these teams. This is going to be difficult for a lot of squads now, Glitter, because you see Red Dragon so far ahead. I mean, we say 19 points, but that's just ahead of second place. It's like 30-ish points ahead of some of the rest of the lobby, so they really need to find a game or maybe find a way to shut down Red Dragon. Now, we're not doing draft POI that's going to be happening in the ALGS. There is the possibility of dropping wherever you like, and if you're feeling brave, you could try and drop at Lightning Rod and contest. I wouldn't recommend it with how Red Dragon have been playing, but certainly could be on the possibility of some players' minds here as they look at dropping in. The dropship is going to be going from the northeast here down to the southwest, so Lightning Rod is going to be one of the first positions to drop, and we'll have to see whether we see a change of position from Red Dragon, because Team Clemmy, they've dropped it Lightning Rod. We saw this before, but Red Dragon have not. Red Dragon are repositioning themselves. Now, this could be for one of two reasons. A, they didn't really fancy sharing Lightning Rod. They didn't feel like the loot was good enough in that previous game. But also, B, if you are worried about being targeted for your drop spots, keep people on their feet, change things up, change where you're going to be positioning yourself.
Or C, 3, what if they're going to target the second place team and try and take them out?
I mean, they are going up against Team Kiner in a contest at the moment, so that entirely could be happening, and maybe we'll see that on our screens shortly. As also at the mill, Team Phoenix, we saw them lose a fight earlier against Team Miscam. Is it going to be a little bit more favorable this time? You could already see Bren's gone down. Miscam's probably about to fall as well, and it's sadly just a beautiful heirloom, but it's not going to be enough to keep you alive. Team Miscam this time will be eliminated, and Team Phoenix get the one-up over them. Now, elsewhere on the map, this is what we were mentioning. Red Dragon have dropped over towards Team Kiner.
You know, I kind of said that in jest. I wasn't really sure if Red Dragon would be that unhinged to kind of go for something like this. It seems like they are, but there's also a decent amount of damage coming out of Kiner back towards Red Dragon, so they have to back off. Meanwhile, Team Phoenix thought they could maybe hold mill to themselves, but Team Horizon wanted to see if they could get involved and maybe clean up some free KP. They're down to 2, so they've taken a little bit of punishment for trying to do just that. They do have the Lifeline, who might be able to try and get that Tippy Taps, who's able to do that, get the Bloodhound up, but then the Lifeline's down, and now it's all down to 1. Team Phoenix thought they won their contest and cannot catch a break at mill.
That's such a shame for them, as now we again turn back over towards Northpad. And even though, yes, this is a brilliant idea theoretically by Red Dragon, but let's also look at the downside if this goes wrong, right? Team Kiner, if they take down Red Dragon and they wipe them off of the map here in match number 4, they then get the chance to catch them up in first place. So whilst this is a strategically impressive play for Red Dragon, it's also a very risky one at the same time. But I love it. This is one of the advantages of not having the draft POI. They can drop wherever they want, and they are contesting Team Kiner and trying to wipe the competition off of the map as early as possible.
Honestly, both teams are doing a really good job with their clearly limited amount of resources for dragging this fight on as long as it's been continuing. Team Kiner trying to do as much damage as possible. They get pushed and they lose 1. It's now down to just 2 to try and see if they can clean this up. Meanwhile, they're trading these knocks. Prestis does go down. Team Kiner trying to see whatever information they can find here. Staying alive, that fuse definitely being a little bit annoying to deal with for Team Kiner, doing a good job zoning on behalf of Red Dragon, but this is just so much back and forth.
It's a 2 versus 1, though, in favor of Team Kiner. And this might be the end of this fight happening right in front of our very eyes. Red Dragon, they tried to take out the competition, sadly has not gone their way, and now Team Kiner have the opportunity to play catch-up here. Our second place team, they were 19 points behind, but suddenly that becomes 16 points behind with that victory in that fight, and they are alone on the northeast, so they will be able to get back up to a full 3 and loot and join the game. Now we can turn our attentions to where the zone is going to be going here, Glitter. We're heading all the way down south. It's going to be a long way to go for Team Kiner, and Team Cold are one of these squads who have found themselves all the way down on the southern side of the arena fight.
Forrest was doing a good job for Team Cold there for a little bit, able to get some nice damage through. Does get knocked, but that is the only player on Cold that will get knocked, as GSC is eliminated in the kill feed. And Cold looking to find some aggression here, which I'm loving, because they are definitely one of the squads that could use a massive a massive performance if they want to get back up even towards the top 2 with what we've seen out of Team Kiner and Red Dragon. It's going to take a really decent game.
Well, they have found themselves in one of the best positions. I mean, assuming this is going to be an Echo HQ zone, which I'm sure most of the players will be thinking as well. Traditionally, with a pull like this, it will be heading this way. And Cold will be able to stay there for quite some time and potentially hold off any remaining pushes from elsewhere and pick up some KP to try and find a victory. And with Red Dragon going down early, it opens things up to the rest of the lobby. And we really... I mean, I'm going to mention it again. A very brave thing to do from Red Dragon, and they were punished for it, but I still kind of love it.
Honestly, out of all of the games to have tried something like that to shut down the second place team, though, this was probably the game to do it. It's the last match on Stormpoint in the first duo of Stormpoint games. They still get to do another World's Edge where they already won a game, and then another Stormpoint game where they already won a game, as that redeploy does get broken there. But it was a strategic choice that could have paid off and would have been worth it if they won, but doesn't punish them too much if it doesn't pan out. They're still in a good spot.
By the way, nothing more demoralizing than an evac tower getting shot out right above your head when you're trying to make your rotation. You've already made the plan, you've made the call, everyone knows exactly where you want to go, and then suddenly the balloon blows up and you just thinking, okay, now where do we go? That's when you need your IGL to be thinking on their feet and reconsidering your plans and your options, because often when your balloon goes down, someone might be pushing you following it as well. It's Team Clemmy making their move and making their rotation through. Having the Horizon, I think, is really good on Stormpoint. We've mentioned this throughout the years in Apex Legends because of the height difference in a lot of the areas. Oh, and he's gone down, so it is going to be a 3 versus 2 temporarily, but they should be able to get them back on their feet before we have this engagement.
Looks like Team Kazakh might be the cause of all of the chaos that they've got going on here, but they are just trying to get out of dodge and make a rotation through this choke, do whatever they can to zone off and block vision, because they also have Team Faco on the backside of them pushing down behind. And if they can avoid getting caught between those teams, they absolutely will, which will end up saving Team Clemmy as well. So a little bit of a reset for all teams involved.
Yeah, there's 4 teams actually in the kind of southern area of command center around Stormcatcher as well, who all still have to move quite far south. But at this stage of the game, when you know it's a pull like this and you realize you're not going to be getting into a priority position, you know that you're going to have to take some fights in the early game. You're going to have to take some fights in the mid game here, because if you are one of the first to move and you get into a spot, you're probably going to be held out in a choke anyway. So instead, you commit to playing edge. You commit to the fact that you want to be the last team to survive on the northern side. And then you've got kills, then you've got some points, and then you can reconsider how you want to try and get into a spot. Now, one thing that Red Dragon dropping on Team Kiner did do here, Glitter, is Team Kiner, they have the longest rotation possible. Now, Red Dragon wouldn't have known that when they made the drop, of course. That's at least good news for Red Dragon, that they've delayed Kiner to a point that their position is going to be very difficult when they do arrive to this zone.
Yeah, and as we were taking a look at that map view, we also saw just how many teams are currently coexisting in Echo HQ, everyone trying to claim a little bit of building space. We checked in with Cold earlier, and right now this Watson's going to be paying off for them in spades, being able to at least claim these buildings and have those fences at their disposal. Combined with the information they'll be able to get out of that Bloodhound, this could be an opportunity for Cold to really do some damage, but they're just all stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, Cold repositioning themselves slightly from the building we saw them in earlier. One of the advantages of the position that Cold find themselves in now is you can actually peek out and do a little bit more damage to teams arriving, albeit you are a little bit more vulnerable to those teams in the position you find yourselves in, but Cold will certainly have the Watson advantage of being able to put those fences down and keep teams at bay. Now, Team Carlos, another team who we have to keep an eye on because they are certainly still in the conversation of getting to the Esports World Cup. They're a little bit further behind the likes of Red Dragon, but one big game here, and they find themselves right back on track because Red Dragon were eliminated early.
Team Horizon on the outskirts here, looking to see if there's any playable space left available to them. For now, they'll just hold the outside of this wall and see what information they can gather. If there's anyone right next to them, they can do some damage to it. And unsuspecting Bangalore Nice little push there out of Horizon to get that knock. I mean, right now, they've actually handled this very well for themselves.
Yeah, they probably are going to be able to find themselves in a really good spot on the southwest side for now. I like the trigger discipline as well in that particular push. Not shooting straight away, but instead getting into a spot where you can one clip. As Team Bambino will sadly fall. Dolphin was the one who got caught off guard there from behind. And now Team Horizon will have this southwest side. But they are going to have to continue moving in. They're going to have to wait for that circle information, though, to come on their screen. A team that does have ring console information is Team Carlos. So they have the advantage of playing a controller legend. They have the catalyst, they have the ring console information, and they know they have to move slightly south here, as well as also heading on the eastern side of the map. But a lot of Echo HQ, in fact, I think all of Echo HQ has been taken, and that's what Team Clemmy is currently finding out. They have one of the further positions outside of Echo HQ, just looking down on what is all the carnage below them, and all of the positions that have been very much grasped by those squads who got there a little bit quicker.
This would be an interesting one to see how these teams that are left on the outskirts handle this. Will they try to wait for all of the squads in Echo HQ to kind of cannibalize each other and take each other out? And then can they play cleanup squad on the fringes as we get a look at that next shift? And Team Clemmy going to be very happy with that one, as are Cold after their reposition.
Yeah, and Clemmy won't know about it at the moment. Neither, well, actually, none of these teams really that are down in Echo HQ are going to know just yet. A team that will get a lot of information is Team Kiner. They're in Pylon. They can hit that survey beacon if they get the opportunity to, which will give them a lot of info about where those quads currently reside. But it's Team Carlos who are going to be south of them, holding them out a little bit. But the advantage of Kiner playing in the way they did, late rotating, getting the early fight, getting extra Evo shields because of it, and having the lifeline means they've got two players that are up onto red at the moment. So they do have the shield advantage over Team Carlos here, who are having to just back off. And Team Kiner, they tried to get aggressive, they tried to force that fight, but Team Carlos quite intelligently not taking it, saying, look, this is a stupid fight for us to take out in the open. Let's get into a position where we can potentially gatekeep. But they do back off into Team Horizon, who are just south of them. And now Team Horizon can potentially really ruin the day of Team Carlos.
Yeah, Team Horizon looking really comfortable with their shields as well. Just on the inside edge of the next safe circle, and that entire northern area could potentially just squish and condense down into one massive fight of chaos. There was a second where Team Feco was even debating trying to move in towards there, but it'd still be Team Kiner, Team Carlos, and Team Horizon hanging out. Meanwhile, on the flip side of that, far south, we've got Team Taxington, who will be near Team Thorfinn, and they will also be looking towards each other to try and clean this fight up, because they're going to be forced to move in after this next shrink, and they don't want to have to deal with anybody else right next to them. Do they know? Do they not know they're right behind them?
I don't think they know. Team Thorfinn have done so well with the trigger discipline here, and now they get to pounce, now they get to strike, and now they get to reap the rewards of being the patient side and recognizing what a secret spot they had found themselves in. They do take down two, haven't secured the kills just yet, but now someone else joins in as Team Taxington will be eliminated, but that has given away the position of Team Thorfinn. DN will now be more than aware of where Thorfinn currently reside. So now the next plan is, how do you get out of this position you found yourself in?
And now we're back up to the north side of things, and this was that collapse I was talking about. You've got Team Kiner, Team Carlos, Team Horizon, everybody in this area looking to try and gatekeep what they can. Team Horizon's been waiting for this moment, but everyone along the edge will at least be able to stay safe for the next minute and a half. But because Team Kiner specifically, who's the farthest northeast of this specific mountain, is going to have to wrap towards Carlos and Team Horizon, so it's going to be a rough push out for them.
Oh, the zone is shifting back east again, so this is great news for Cold, for Jay Hanzo, Team K Swinny. They're all in prime spots. Also, I've got to the point now where there's so many Team X's that when I see a team like Cold, I'm like, I want to call them Team Cold because it just seems like Team should be in front of everything at this point. But Team Carlos are struggling a little bit. A lot of damage has been taken. Young Hong Kong's almost fallen. Frick's also on a slither of HP, but they are going to get the opportunity to reset here because Team Kaina haven't quite pushed in, but now they get the knock, and Team Kaina will start to get involved. But what a reposition that is from you, who says, look, let's get involved on the other side. I've got the Prowler, but sadly, the rest of his team is falling.
Meanwhile, while this is happening, you can see Team Horizon pushing up in the wings, trying to see if they can clean this up, not only take out the rest of Team Kiner, but also Team Carlos, clear out that entire northern corner, all of that loot at their disposal. Meanwhile, Atlas had also gone out in the kill feed, and now that fight you had mentioned earlier, Team Thorfinn having to move in towards DN is starting to pop off.
And I think that's good news for the likes of Red Dragon as well. Seeing Team Kaina eliminated outside of the top 10. Not much placement, only 1 placement point and the kills that they had previously got on Red Dragon. So in the end, what? 4 points was gathered by Team Kaina. They were down by 19. So I think Red Dragon will see that still as a success, that they delayed Team Kaina, so they only were able to catch up by 4 going into match 5 and match 6. But now our attention can turn back to the circle. You can see it on the screen where Stay Healthy are here. They're just outside of where this zone is going to be pulling, so you have to put the Dark Veil down now to reposition and just cut off some of those sight lines so that you can move in and try and get into the circle.
It was a good Dark Veil blocking the vision of most of the teams as well, but there's still Team Kazakh on the north side that was looking at Stay Healthy and dealing some damage on them as they make their move in. Team Horizon now having to finally make that rotation, run straight into the arms of Team Clemmy, who have been waiting on the outskirts in those buildings. Some nice damage coming out of Team Horizon, but they do lose their lifeline, which is going to be pivotal in this fight. Team Clemmy trying to do what they can, knowing that they have an advantage that they can try and push not only literally, but also just try and keep them here with the gatekeeping, because they won't be safe in this area forever. And this might be the only KP that Team Clemmy will be able to get, having to move in to the next circle.
Good target priority, though, from King Victor at the moment, just really helping his teammate to ensure that he isn't going to get pushed and dealing damage from left and right to try and make themselves as big as possible, as it's starting to get a little bit frisky down over in Echo HQ. Cold still on blues, have got a couple of kills though now. Could this be the game? Look where that circle is pulling. This is perfect for Cold. It was a great read from Graceful, and caught in your pause screen maybe, caught changing controls, maybe in a death box, but that is not where you want to be. 3 damage up from above.
That was a big win. Cold now also having a lot of space cleared out for them. Meanwhile, in the outskirts, it's Team Horizon who wins that fight up against Team Clemmy, so they now own the western edge. They'll be moving in while Cold is trying to fight Team J Hanzo inside this building. And if they can take this fight, if they can win this, it will give them all of the cover that they need up against the remaining squads.
They are getting aggressive. You can see Forrest was leading the way, gets that Bloodhound scan, gets the information, and Cold, they are being aggressive when they need to as well. It was one thing that we've noted on in the previous games. They were being quite passive, playing for late game, but weren't necessarily getting the points and the kills on the board. But Graceful called this one very early down towards Echo HQ, and they found themselves, and now will find themselves, in one of the prime spots. 4 teams left as J Hanzo are eliminated. Team Horizon are on full red Evos, and they're going to be a real threat to DN. They've already been able to do a lot of damage to them trying to make their rotation through, and sadly now DN probably going to fall because of it, but Horizon also need to be careful, but at least they've got the tippy taps available.
Horizon have actually dealt with this western edge of the circle and the teams that are there very, very well for themselves. Cold now do have 1 rat on Team K-Swinny that they need to keep their eyes on near them, while they're also trying to do some damage to DN and Team Horizon across the way. You can see those scans coming through, and they might be able to get the information they're looking for. Some damage coming out of Forest down below with that Hemi. Honestly, Cold are set up beautifully right now.
Give that man an AWP and he'll get the job done, I promise you. But actually, Graceful says, you know what, I'll send it. I've got the EVA 8. Cold, again, committing to the fight and taking out the rat because they knew it could have been a real threat to them later on. But they keep 1 player on the high ground to ensure they're not going to be pushed whilst it happens. DN are only a 2 nearby, and now they will push in, hearing those shots happening. But Cold have already been able to reset. They'll shut down the remainder of DN. Now we've got a 3v3, but Team Horizon have the advantage. They have the shields, and they're getting aggressive.
This could be an opportunity for Horizon to get a big win, but a solid performance for both of these squads here so far. Enough time is passing that Cold should be able to get a reset, and it'll just come down to the strategy, the right IGLing, everybody back and healthy now on behalf of Cold. But like you said, that armor advantage in favor of Horizon could be the difference maker.
You can see Cold at the moment just kind of sussing out the areas of where that circle is going to be finishing as well. They were maybe trying to work out if there was a potential heal off that could be happening. Horizon have the advantage. Horizon have the positioning, and they have the big bad boy Kraber. If Bongo can hit a headshot with this one, it might just be GG, and they'll be winning this match and hurtling themselves up the leaderboard. You can see 6 kills and 2 assists at the moment, so they've got plenty of kills to work with as well to Horizon. But Victor, he's struggling a little bit. He's taking a lot of damage, but Horizon will do damage from elsewhere, and now Team Horizon should be able to clean up.
They opted to go to the high ground, and all Horizon have to do is wait for them to come into their clutches. I mean, that was a game that Horizon could have lost when they were doing their fight against Clemmy on the west side. Instead, Team Horizon take match number 4, and they did it in a really strong fashion. That was some really smart gameplay. Like you said, they had that off angle with the Kraber trying to see if Cole was going to go down low. Cold ended up going high, but they had left 2 players up there and they were ready for it. And honestly, that was a really, really good performance.
Yeah, I think Cold will still be happy because every team kind of was pushing towards them. So they will be like, all right, well, we got second place. We got some good kills. We put ourselves at least in the conversation now of qualification with a points total like that, as will Horizon. I mean, a victory plus they had plenty of kills there to work with. So they're also going to be up there, imagine, in the top 5 after a performance like that. So suddenly, Red Dragon's comfortable 19-point lead after their attempt to drop on Team Kaina now allows all these other teams to kind of get that belief once more of, okay, we can still make it going into match number 5.
Well, we'll take a look back at the final circle moment so we can see just exactly how it played out, or how Horizon made it play out in their favor. Like you said, they did have the Kraber. There was potential for some crazy action to come through on the low ground if Cold had made that push out. You saw they thought about it and then decided to go back up to the high ground and see if it would fare better for them. And they did have the Bangalore ult to contend with, something that they needed to worry about. But once the call was made that Cold had pushed up to the high ground, all they had to do was collapse. Now, to be fair, a lot of damage was dealt, at least onto Victor on behalf of Cold. But having to zip up to a team is never a favorable situation, Dan. So in the end, it is Team Horizon. 15 kills, 27 points. I mean, that's going to definitely chip away at that gap.
Oh, boy, did they need that. I mean, they were down in the bottom 3 prior to this game, only on 6 points. Suddenly, they're on 33 points, which will send them into not just the top 5, but probably the top 3, catching up the likes of Red Dragon, Team Kaina, Team Carlos, etc. Cold, they put 17 points on the board. They were on 18 coming into this one, so they'll now also be up in around the mid-30s. So, again, that's closing in on the likes of Red Dragon. Still a gap between first and the rest of the lobby, but that gap is slightly closed because of Team Kaina taking them down in that 3v3 they had right at the start of the game. DN also picking up 14 points to put themselves slightly in the conversation. As we now look at the bottom 10, we will see that Red Dragon, they did exit early. They were able to pick up 1 kill at the very least, so 1 extra point to go on the board will help them towards their chances of getting to the Esports World Cup.
Yeah, and I mean, Team Phoenix cannot catch a break at Mill winning the contest with Miscom and then just getting pushed by another team and getting taken out. So it's been a rough storm point for them, but we'll see what this does for our overall series results here so far. Where is everybody standing? Red Dragon at 52, Team Kiner at 36, and that actually jumped Cold up big time, only 1 point behind Team Kiner now, followed by our winners of that last match, Team Horizon at 32. So that made a massive difference for them as well. And we're actually really close when you're looking at 2nd through 7th. It is still that gap favoring Red Dragon right now. We only have 2 more matches left, Dan.
Yeah, it's still a big enough gap that I think Red Dragon will be confident, but when they look back, let's say they don't qualify for the Esports World Cup, right? Let's say things go south from here. Will they look back at that moment of that decision to drop on Team Kaina as what ruined their chances? Or they do qualify, they might look back at it and say this was what actually qualified us. It was a very interesting decision indeed. Team Cold, though, we said they needed one big game. They got their big game. Now they do have an opportunity to get to the Esports World Cup with 2 matches remaining.
No regrets. I won't hear anything bad said about it, okay, as we turn our focus back towards World's Edge for our first of our redemption matches. Before we do that, though, it's time for another short break, so don't go anywhere. You're watching the Esports World Cup. Welcome back, everybody. We are keeping things moving here at the Esports World Cup qualifier for Apex Legends in our EMEA region. We've made it through our first 4 matches of the day already, and now it is time to head into match number 5, which means we are going back to World's Edge for the next one. And still, even after an unceremonious knocking out in match number 4, Red Dragon has a massive gap over the competition right now, Gaskin.
Yeah, still a 16-point lead, I believe, or somewhere around that. We'll get confirmation later. But now they have the opportunity to try and increase that gap. Now, they've been dropping at Climatizer when we've been on World's Edge, but they were dropping at Lightning Rod and they changed their mind in match number 4. So we might see them do the same thing here in match 5. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, right? This would be a typical decision from the likes of them to say, all right, well, it kind of worked in match number 4. Even in a drop that wasn't advantageous to us, maybe let's try it one more time, because if they can eliminate Team Kaina, suddenly they change match 6 to only being really them versus Cold. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. What do you think? Do you think they'll do it?
Well, you know, I like when teams do that. I want teams to be confident enough to kind of go after and knock out their competition if they can. I think the right choice was to do it in match number 4 because, like I said, they still have a cushion with these next 2 matches where if they want to just play their own game and maintain that gap, they can. Or arguably, if they try to get and do it in match number 5, they technically still have a 1-game cushion, and if it succeeds in match number 5, they are almost guaranteeing themselves the win. It depends on how good they're feeling about their gameplay here so far. You look skeptical, but I'm in favor of it.
You're a Battle Royale purist, right? You've been playing Battle Royales for a lot longer than I was when I started playing Apex Legends, but I think that with how dominant they were on World's Edge and the position they find themselves in Climatizer not being contested, I would imagine that they will be thinking, all right, we could probably just play this one safe. But at the same time, they did just make a very risky decision in match 4, so I think it's entirely possible. Again, it's just going to come down to that call and how brave they want to be. A 16-point gap is still a pretty big gap to work with here. So even if it went wrong, they would have that buffer of match 6. I think the bigger worry now is looking at the leaderboard and the fact that Cold come into the equation, right? And Cold are suddenly also only, what, like 16, 17 points behind as well. And that is another team that you have to worry about as we look at match 5. So 16 points between them and Kaina, 17 points between them and Cold. you've got to also be thinking about another team, and even Team Horizon, like, it's still doable in 2 matches. I think after match 3 going into match 4, it was just Red Dragon and Kiner as the 2 main threats, but now there are other teams in this equation.
I mean, we've seen multiple 20-plus point matches here today. We saw a 27-point match, so that gap that you keep talking about, like you're saying, it absolutely, it is closable if we get a pop-off performance. And I think, like you're pointing out, at this point, shutting down Team Kiner doesn't do... It's not as impactful with how close the scores have gotten on behalf of Cold and Team Horizon, because if you shut down one and then the other 2 do well, then they still are closing that gap. It's probably the opportunity for Red Dragon to just play the way they were playing, because they did so well, like you were mentioning, in those first few World's Edge matches. But there also is the potential for top 2 through 5 in fighting as well. Maybe they want to take each other out and see if they can clear out the people who are only 1 or 2 or 3 points behind them, because we talked about it at the top of the show. We had 2 teams that could qualify out of APAC North, and 2nd and 3rd were separated by 1 point. And I feel like it's always so much worse when you miss out on a qualification spot by a single point.
On the opposite side of that story, you've also got Team Kiner, who could, if they wanted to, change the narrative by them dropping on Red Dragon up towards Climatizer, right? They could say, actually, we think that 16 points is a significant gap that we might not be able to catch them up if we just allow them to play it out. Because if you are just joining us, this is not match point in these regional qualifiers. It is just accumulative points across 6 matches, and only 1 team will qualify for the Esports World Cup from EMEA. Of course, they've already had 8 invited teams from ALGS, but now this is your chance to try and get to Riyadh and try and prove that you are one of the best teams, not just in the region, but in the world as well. And if Team Kiner want to get there, they have to somehow surpass Red Dragon, who have quite a significant lead. So we'll have to see how World's Edge fares and what the decisions are made by both Red Dragon, Team Kiner, and Cold.
Well, we're about to find out as match number 5 is loading in. Our players are getting ready, and the answers to all of our questions on the possibility of contests, and not even talking about the top 5, top 7 teams, just in general. We've seen contests twice now at Lava Siphon that have hit the second time around, really hindered Team K Swinny. That could be something we're looking at. The first match of the day, we saw a contestant Geyser that then got completely given up in the second match. So there's still other squads that could go after each other.
And this is a contest happening at Lava Siphon, but I am watching the mini-map, by the way, and I'm sorry, everyone, that I'm watching something else, but Red Dragon and Team Kiner are both at Climatizer. Team Kiner are taking it to Red Dragon here, and they are saying, actually, we beat you when you dropped on us. Maybe we can take you out, and this could be the best play that Kiner could have possibly made, because I believe if they just let Red Dragon play their game here from Climatizer, the gap gets too big in match 6. They want to try and take it to them here in match 5.
Give me the chaos. This is definitely kind of a make or break situation here. Like you were mentioning on behalf of Kiner, if they can shut down Red Dragon again, and looking at where this circle is, you can see a sliver of it right there on their mini map. They're going to be in a really solid spot positionally for the next few rotations. So they are in a position to completely secure the match for themselves right now, and you can see that Kiner are making that move up onto Red Dragon as we speak.
Even though it's only match 5, this could be a team fight that potentially sends you to the Esports World Cup. With how many points Red Dragon could be ahead here, and they have the advantage in the fight. The longbow comes through, and Team Kiner eliminated as Red Dragon take prime position. They take pole position for their chances here of getting to the Esports World Cup.
I don't know, because we didn't see the first knock, but Taskmaster got a knock before the fight even really started. I don't know if they were trying to, if Kiner was going for like an off angle or something, but Red Dragon shut that down so fast, absolutely not allowing for any confusion on who is going to be owning Climatizer. And the same situation now applies for Red Dragon. Now they own all that loot. They have an incredible position to move into literally the next 2 rings, which you guys will be able to see in a second. And this is just potentially another Red Dragon situation that is gonna increase that gap. But one of the teams that could close it is Cold, landed in Landslide, and already making a very fast rotation out of there.
Yeah, quite rightly, we just focused on Cold for a short while because they were only 1 point behind Team Kiner, right? So they are now going to be the next team in the firing line for Red Dragon. As we turn our attention to Geyser, Team Kazakh taking a fight at the moment and all pretty healthy on blues. Whether they'll try and push this advantage they temporarily had or not, as it's scraps everywhere right now, Glitter. Everyone getting a little bit antsy and recognizing you have to be aggressive if you want to catch Red Dragon. Especially seeing in the kill feed that Team Kiner went down, you can make the assumption that there was probably a little contest they had gone down prior. Team Carlos, team that has found points on World's Edge before, and if they can find a few more kills and position themselves in the late game, still have an opportunity to get to the Esports World Cup.
I believe they're going up against Team Phoenix as well. A squad who could just not catch a break on Storm Point. Definitely were looking to get some points here on World's Edge. And now finding themselves in a rough spot, even though Survey Camp was looking pretty comfortable for them. Miscom going down in the kill feed. I believe they were fighting over at Geyser. Carlos getting knocked out. Fricks is down. They're down to a 2-man squad. And there are like 3 other teams pushing in on this action right now.
Gonna try and hold off as a 2. Are able to get the res. Can Fricks actually get a shield swap or anything though? Because Atlas relentless with their aggression. Wingman doing the damage as well. Havoc in the back pocket with the Turby Werby, may I add. So it is just going to be bad news bears on the receiving end of this, because Atlas should be able to clean this one up comfortably. They have lost 1, but looks like they should be able to pick up the rest of the pieces.
Just continuing to get those knocks, clean up the already knocked players, but now they're down to 1. Look at the sliver of health off in the distance as well. I mean, that was a really, really strong push, but Atlas is now down to 1. You have Team Carlos still in the area, Team Phoenix still in the area, and you can see Bloodhound. Thor is just going to try and do what they can to try and escape. Meanwhile, I mentioned Geyser. You've now got Team Taxington and Team Faco fighting here in Geyser. I think as well as one other squad. I think Team Kazakh is in here too. This is just chaos.
This is just an int fest at the moment. Everyone just full on sending it, recognizing they have to be aggressive, and this may be their only game to potentially catch up the lobby leaders. So they hear any gunfire, they take any sort of advantage, and they will just continue to push and press to try and pick up that extra bit of KP prior to getting into these final circles. And also, the circle is moving so heavily north that a lot of these southern teams don't really have much options, because there's a lot of chokeholds you're going to have to go through from this point. So Team Taxington against Team Kazakh still going to be taking this fight, and Team Faco also in the area as well. So just all these teams at the moment saying, look, our backs are quite literally against the wall. We have to do something here, and that means we have to fight.
Few kills here and there being cleaned up, with possibly a couple stragglers surviving. Meanwhile, we're back now up north. We're seeing Team Bambino there. We still got an Atlas player, a Team Carlos player. Team Phoenix has backed off super far north, but now we are looking at potentially Team J Hanzo trying to get involved in this Geyser 4-team fight that's going on in these chokes. I mean, everyone is so desperate for KP that if there's a third-party opportunity, if they even hear a few shots that sound like they're going on for a little while, they're trying to get there and clean them up. And this is just what we're seeing on what the north and southern sides of the circle right now.
And whilst earlier I said a lot of these fights could impact whether you get to the Esports World Cup or not, a lot of these fights could be whether you don't qualify for the Esports World Cup, because the gap might just be too much if you go down too early and you will be too far behind. Mathematically, maybe even impossible to catch up the likes of Red Dragon in match 6. So that's why we're seeing so many of these teams just be ruthless with their pushes. Zone-wise, by the way, we're heading up towards Survey Camp. We haven't had much of a chance to look at it because of the amount of action that has been happening on the southern side of World's Edge right now. Teams that are up there, Red Dragon and Cold, are 2 leaders in this lobby, and are 2 teams that we will keep an eye on a little bit later once everyone else arrives. But Team Taxington have come out of guys are pretty healthy, actually. Red armor, 2 purples, got the lifeline on board, and they are chasing the stragglers from Geyser.
They did well managing a lot of that chaos back and forth, even redeploying and kind of repositioning behind some of the teams that were trying to sneak up on them. So they handled that situation very, very well. Team J Hanzo opting to get out of dodge and get away. You can see we've got another rat trying to survive for Team K Swinny yet again, and near Team Taxington, so that could be risky. But like you were mentioning, Red Dragon and Cold, some of our top squads right now, up there in some really solid spots for this next ring, looking very comfortable. Red Dragon having claimed Climatizer, and Cold making a very early rotate out of Landslide, knowing where they needed to get to try and hold some decent positioning. And you can see just how chaotic still that northeast side is. Everyone's still fighting up there.
Is worth noting that Team Horizon and Team Kirisha still in the conversation as well, and still alive in this game, albeit not in quite as good positions as the likes of Cold and Red Dragon, as one of Team Clemmy falls, and suddenly Fisher and Babylons are going to have to work together to try and maybe pick up the pieces here. But I think it's going to be just the decision to retreat. It's a tough one. It's a tough call to make, especially in a game like this, but Bambino, Dolphin, they're going to be pretty happy that at least they've been able to take down the initial player here. They've not been able to find maybe as much points as they would have expected, only on 18 points after the first 4 matches, so they would need a victory here really to give them any chances of getting to the Esports World Cup. But they have done at least the job of deleting the rest of Atlas, as now they look up towards the 2 remaining players they were fighting previous.
Meanwhile, you've got Thorfinn. Team Taxington ran into Team Thorfinn as they were rotating out and away from all of that geyser chaos, and Team Thorfinn was apparently ready and waiting to take out Team Taxington. They're now taking some damage here, but they do have enough loot boxes to get those heals. It should be able to make their way through their choke. If they have even a redeploy, that would be helpful as well. The rat on K Swinny has managed to get past all of this chaos, and those... looks like Team Thorfinn will be playing the southern edge by themselves. Meanwhile, you had mentioned Team Clemmy still a duo right now, trying to see if they can handle Bambino, but they're going to get pushed farther east. They have to decide how they want to handle this fight before they start taking damage from the ring. As I say that, we lose 1, soon we'll lose the 3rd, and Team Clemmy go down in Skyhook to Team Bambino, who now have to make their way in and see if they can get past Cybercats, aka Team Karusha, which you mentioned, one of those teams still in the conversation, and Team Horizon, who look like they might be trying to move in to see if they can maybe gatekeep this.
This could be big for Horizon if they can pick up these kills and take the western side, or at least some of the western side. As you mentioned, Karusha are also there. For Horizon, you know, they're not completely out of this. They're 19 points behind first place coming into match 5 here. Definitely achievable if Red Dragon were to go out a little bit earlier than them. They can close that gap going into match 6. After their victory in match number 4, they'll certainly be feeling confident. You can see it in their gameplay here, Glitter. They are full sending towards this team. They want this fight. They want to take the fight, and they get the first knock.
This was a huge push for Horizon, an opportunity to really start closing that gap and take a fight that they clearly felt confident about taking. They had good shields to move in, and they're just going to continue trying to clean this up, own this space. But like you mentioned, we have Cybercats, Team Karusha in the wings, who will be listening for this. Are they going to push in and try to then take out Team Horizon?
It might just happen, because they've definitely closed in. You can see on the minimap there, they've started to surround the area, because this western side isn't the easiest place to play going up towards survey camp. So again, if you're going to play edge, take advantage of any third parties that are going to be possible and any kills that might come out of it. But on the other side of all of this, you've also got the Cybercats, who are now going to be more than happy to see what's going down. Team Kirisha, who we of course previously mentioned, just waiting to pick up those kills. And the Cybercats, I think they have a good opportunity to still get in to the top 2 position, especially after their win earlier, when they had that high ground. And then when they got into that final circle, they showed great consistency as a squad, great focus to be able to take those fights, and they're looking to try and do something similar here.
Trying to do a little bit of damage as both teams disengage. Team Horizon going the other direction, and as they do that, Team Bambino goes down in the kill feed, but back from the dead, K Swinny, no longer a solo, managed to get all three of Team K20 back up, and they are facing off against Team Horizon, who had rotated away, who now might get pinched between Team K20 and Cybercats.
Yeah, the Cybercats arriving from the train tracks. They say choo-choo, let's get involved in this one. We'll actually try and find some kills, but because everyone's kind of posturing up against each other, no one really doing that initial damage and everyone backing off. But certainly Team Horizon, they're the ones who have to push because they're the ones who are between the two teams and they recognize they have to be aggressive. There has been a knock on both sides, so this is a 2 versus 2 now. And this could be a really big fight for the chance for Cybercats to try and get in the conversation for the Esports World Cup.
Not only that, but potentially an opportunity for Team K20 to clean all of this up while it's going down. You can see just how low Cybercats are. They end up getting taken out. And this is an opportunity for Team K20 to push in. They do exactly that. Take out Team Horizon, but now Team Carlos is moving in on Team K20.
Team K20 does have temporary red shield swaps though, so at least gives them the chance to reset, stabilize here, and Team Carlos recognize that and will back off back towards Survey Camp. We are going to be heading north of Survey Camp, up towards the mountains and almost towards the train tracks, and do you know who's up there? It's Red Dragon. Of course, who else would it be when it's a climatizer win for them in their contest, and then it allows them to rotate north and take this tip of the northern side of World's Edge. But Team Cold are going to be their closest competitors now who are still alive, but they are on the southern side towards Epicenter and they're being held out by Thorfinn. They've already lost Forest. Can JMW and Graceful do something here to keep their hopes alive?
Yeah, Cold moved in at a really good time to get this position in Epi, but then didn't have the information on the next few rings while they held it. So now they find themselves sandwiched between two teams. They've lost Forest, and they have to try and manage the situation right now. They're doing a good job at least keeping themselves alive, but escaping this unscathed is going to be difficult. Maybe they can go for a wide southwest rotation, which looks like they might be trying to do right now, and they are just praying that no one is looking towards them.
They're hoping they can replicate what they did in the semifinals, finding a victory as a duo. Sadly, don't have the banner of Forest, so it is just going to have to be the two of them competing together to try and get a little bit further, at least get some more placement points, and at least get closer to Red Dragon. If they can somehow outplace Red Dragon in this, it would be massive for them as JMW doing damage with the Nemesis from a distance. And Cold, they're still a threat as a two. JMW and Graceful still very much can deal some damage in this final circle, but at the moment it's just about finding a position to play, and they're unable to do so right now. Will eventually find a little caravan, but they're gonna be pushed.
You know, I thought that there was maybe a sliver of hope. Nice shots out of JMW right now. Almost clutching that up. Are you kidding me? Just barely get taken out. That was a really, really good attempt at trying to save that battle. There were just too many teams looking the direction of Cold.
And all the meanwhile, whilst all this commotion is happening, Red Dragon are sitting upon their throne at the top of the mountain, waiting for everyone to push towards them as another victory maybe is on the horizon for them, and that is not a play on words because Horizon were also close. But Red Dragon, they're the only team within zone. All the other teams are within these buildings of Survey Camp. DN, Stay Healthy, K-Swinny, Thorfinn, and the Rat of Jay Hanzo are on the south, and all are going to have to move in at the same time. The only thing that could really stop Red Dragon was if everyone suddenly turned their attention towards Red Dragon at the same time. Potentially this rotation from K-Swinny might be able to catch Red Dragon offside. You can see they are spread across these mountains at the moment. If K-Swinny can engage on the two Red Dragon players on this particular rock, there is a chance they could maybe take Godspot off of them.
Did K-Swinny's team do enough to get their shields leveled up to have any sort of an advantage here, or will Red Dragon just be able to deathball yet another team? We see the Beast of the Hunt is popped, and they drop down to try and clear them out instantly. Prestis is melting people and not allowing K-Swinny to get any sort of an advantage here on them. That was a really, really rough try on behalf of Team K-Swinny. Meanwhile, they've managed to also maintain this spread that you were talking about on top of these rocks. They didn't have to collapse into each other. Between the Bangalore ult and the Beast of the Hunt, they did a fantastic job managing that space. They still own one massive rock while everyone else is starting to collapse on each other, and they will be looking at Team Thorfinn across the way.
When I said earlier that the fight that they won at Climatizer could be sending them to the Esports World Cup, it's starting to look more and more likely as a victory is looking incredibly and increasingly likely as we're down to just 4 squads here for Red Dragon and a chance to put themselves in pretty much 1 foot in the door of the Esports World Cup, eliminating the closest competition and then potentially putting another victory on the board here if they play it right. Their closest competition, Team Thorfinn, but it's a 2. It's a 1. It's a 1. There's no one that's as healthy and as good of a position as Red Dragon right now.
And no one who's as annoying as Red Dragon's Fuse, who has just been getting all of these additional shield cracks and damage dealt with that knuckle cluster every single time. They know where some of these solo players are, and they are just trying to be annoying, not wanting to get caught out by any of these rats. But like you said, there is no full healthy squad. You even have Taskmaster on red. Everybody else in the crew close to potentially get there next themselves, depending on how these fights go. And with their ability to both zone and get information for this trio, it's looking inevitable. Meanwhile, the solo for DN does go down, and now Team Thorfinn has pushed up as that duo with Team J Hanzo on the solo hanging back in the wings. Team Thorfinn does both have red shields, but they are on that low ground with a height disadvantage and just trying to figure out how to handle the situation.
I mean, Red Dragon, even if they didn't win this game, they've done so much with the amount of points they put on the board, and they've been able to force Thorfinn down towards J Hanzo. This is just a matter of time. It's a formality at this point. It's Red Dragon again, and that could be the victory that sends them to the Esports World Cup. 1 match still to play, but they have now created an unbelievable gap between themselves and second place.
You know, I think I agree even more now with what Kiner tried to do to take out Red Dragon. Obviously, they wouldn't have known that the zone was also going to end up being very close to them and that they would end up with Red Dragon having a lot of loot. But if they had taken Red Dragon out in that match, it would have literally opened up absolutely everything for the rest of these teams. Now that Red Dragon has won, it's going to be a big gap. We'll take a look back at the final circle moments to see just how clean and perfect Red Dragon played this. But no, like you mentioned, no one was even looking their way for a large majority of the final circle pushes. K-Swinny did try to swing up towards that direction, but they got so aggressively punished for going towards Red Dragon that Red Dragon just had to deal with broken teams across the board. I mean, that and the fact that they weren't missing any of their shots, that they had the height advantage, they had the information with the scans. I mean, this was just another flawless game out of Red Dragon.
And it all started with that victory at Climatizer, didn't it? Taking down Team Kiner, that would have given them confidence. And then, as we mentioned, this final circle was just a formality. It was inevitable at that moment, and it might be inevitable that Red Dragon are going to be going to Esports World Cup with how many points they've put on the board here. When we eventually get the numbers, we can try and crunch it and see how close other teams are. But it's going to have to be a huge victory from one of the chasing teams to try and take down Red Dragon and take their spot. And also eliminating Red Dragon in the early stages as well.
Honestly, there was a moment where I was like, okay, when we saw that Cold was one of the few teams that had managed to rotate their way into the second circle and they were looking pretty good, there was definitely an opportunity for teams like Cold to start closing that gap down as well. As we get to take a look at the stats here from that last match. 10 kills go the way of Red Dragon, 6 onto J Hanzo, 7 onto Thorfinn. So everybody else was still trying to get their KP in. Even Bambino with 6 down there in 11th. What happened was all of those fights on the outskirts, those edge fights, everybody fighting in the chokes, trying to make their way in, knowing that they were the teams that needed that extra KP, kind of added to all of that chaos.
22 points in the end. That puts them on 74 points going into match 6. Now, I'm not claiming myself as an extreme mathematician, but I think we're going to need to see pretty much a 30 bomb from one of these teams that are in second or third to try and catch Red Dragon. But we'll look at the series standings when they come. Thorfinn, 16 points. Jhans, 13 points. still putting themselves with enough points to try and say, all right, let's try and give ourselves a chance, albeit they didn't know Red Dragon was at the tip of that mountain waiting to clean things up. Bambino gets 7 in the end, but it was the play by Team Kiner at the very start of that game, Acclimatizer, to try and shut down Red Dragon. Unable to do so, and now this is what the lay of the land looks like with the series results.
All right, 74 points for Red Dragon right now. Cold actually moving up into second place. So you were mentioning the possibility of a 30-point match. Well, it'd have to be 35. And also hope that Red Dragon doesn't get any points in the next match. I mean, this has just been a stellar performance. We see these squads picking up. I mean, Team Horizon only 1 point behind Cold, and then 3 points behind them is Team Kiner. It's still so close when you even just look at 2 through 10. It is just the point sponge that is Red Dragon right now. They are untouchable.
Yeah, sadly for the rest of the lobby, only 1 spot available here in this EMEA qualifier, and it looks like Red Dragon are likely to take it. It is still possible for Cold to catch them. I will reiterate that. It's doable. It would have to be a 20-plus kill game, but it's not like we've never seen it, right? It happens in pubs. It could happen here. Who knows? But certainly Red Dragon, they put themselves, they're 1 foot in the door of the Esports World Cup. It's been so many incredible performances from them, and we'll have to see how match 6 pans out.
Yeah, well, before we get into match 6, it's time for our final break of the day. So don't go anywhere, because when we return, the culmination of the Esports World Cup qualifiers. Welcome back, everybody. It's the Apex Legends Esports World Cup qualifier for EMEA. We've got 1 more match on the day, but after the absolute clinic that Red Dragon have put on right now, they are looking very comfortable and highly likely to be claiming that sole EMEA spot in the competition. And at this point, it would be very deserved, Dan.
Yeah, and claiming the souls of all the other players as well along their way, because they've just been so ruthless with how they've competed today, destroying the entire competition. And whilst it is very likely Red Dragon will take that 1 spot for the Esports World Cup, there is still a small amount of hope for Cold, who are in 2nd position. So we'll have to see how match 6 does play out. But one thing one of our producers alert us to is this is another PLQ team that we saw qualify for Pro League at the PLQ, and now potentially qualifying for Riyadh, just as we saw Tripods do in North America. So these teams that kind of had to fight through challenges and fight to get back into Pro League in the ALGS, now not only are rewarded with the ALGS, but potentially the Esports World Cup as well.
Yeah, and if you guys are just joining us, I know we still have 1 more match on the day, but if you're just joining us and you are used to your normal Apex Legends content and you're asking, what is the Esports World Cup? How does this all work? Well, we've got an entire video to break it all down. Now, the other reason we wanted to point that out is because this is what all of our teams are playing for. It's an 8-week long competition, 20 different titles, $60 million in total on the line at the Esports World Cup in Riyadh, and $2 million of that will be going to our Apex Legends competitors. $600,000 of that to first place. And today is the first step for one of our teams in EMEA to going on that journey, okay? They want to be in this competition on that global stage. It's going to be an absolutely insane summer filled with esports. And our regional qualifiers have been showing us, like you were kind of mentioning, Dan, that it can literally be any team, whether it's a PLQ team making their way through, whether it's the teams that are established in ALGS that have some of those invites. They're all going to end up on the same stage, and it's going to be a very close competition.
It is. I mean, Red Dragon, they look like an informed team at the moment, but we have to remember that 8 teams were invited for their performance in the ALGS as well, who also are in very fine form coming off the back of competing on LAN, competing online throughout an entire season. So it's not like Red Dragon, if they were to qualify here, would walk in as favorites. By all means, arguably 8 teams ahead of them from this region, let alone the other regions also competing. So it's going to be an incredibly tight affair once we do get to the Esports World Cup. But their ticket is not done yet, right? There is still a chance.
True.
The kill record in a competitive lobby, I believe, is 31 kills from APAC South from XNY. If we would see something like that, then it could happen for Cold here.
Well, we'll have to see if Graceful and Co can kind of bring that to the table. Now, like we mentioned earlier in the day, the map schedule is different than what you're used to. We just did World's Edge for match 5, and now we're going back to Storm Point for match 6. This is the last match of the day, the final opportunity for our teams to claim this spot for EMEA. And like Dan's saying, it has to be a massive performance out of Cold, as they are the second place squad and therefore would be the most likely to do it. Not only would it have to be a massive performance out of Cold, but it would also have to be some sort of a failure on behalf of Red Dragon to keep them as low on points as possible, so that that gap doesn't continue to widen for Cold. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Will Red Dragon get contested? Will everything just be absolutely haywire here in the final moments? We're about to find out, because match number 6 is getting underway. Our players are already jumping out of the drop ship. I am excited for this last game, Dan.
And I'm wondering, where are Red Dragon going to drop? Because I saw a lot in the pre-game chat of everyone saying, let's drop on Red Dragon. Let's make sure that we give Cold a chance. And I think if you're Red Dragon here, you just have to try and be unpredictable. You don't go to Lightning Rod. You probably have a look at the lay of the land here where people are dropping, and just try and find somewhere to call home and stay alive for as quick as possible. We are going to get the contest happening over towards Mill once more between Phoenix and Miscom. At this point, this is just trying to assert a little bit of dominance, regain some pride, and maybe try and just say we were the better team over towards Mill. Looking at Red Dragon, they have landed in the middle of nowhere just to try and stay alive, but we can focus on this fight. Phoenix getting some good damage to start off.
This is just, like you said, this is an opportunity for Phoenix to finally win this fight while they're trying to have this fight with Team Miscom. Though you're going to get Team Horizon pushing in, like we saw that third party come through in the second match on Storm Point the first time around. And once again, there's just absolute chaos over at the Mill. Everybody battling it out here in this last match to try and it's just pride points at this point.
Yeah, at this point, there's a lot of teams that mathematically just cannot catch up with Red Dragon, so it's about just competing and having the chance to play in a competitive lobby as well. It almost becomes a little bit of a scrim for some of these guys to practice and get better and improve for when they next compete in any sort of competition. Red Dragon have dropped down towards Cito and are currently griefing Bambino, it looks, at the moment. Maybe they were trying to target Cold and have just been one POI off. We'll have to see, but for Cold, they're going to have a massive game and find a lot of kills, and sadly, the kill lobby is very much alive right now. 3 teams already been eliminated. Biscam trying to get back up to a full 3 and maybe able to wipe out Phoenix here if they can get a couple more kills. Will do so. Horizon get eliminated in the kill feed as well.
All right. That is not necessarily how I saw that playing out. Team Phoenix also having escaped a little bit after all of that back and forth. I think there was kind of a lull where everybody had to back off and see if they could find some more loot to continue with the fight, and that opened up the opportunity for people to spread out just a little bit more. And we're already down to 16 squads, so things are popping off. And like you mentioned, that's going to make things even harder on Cold to try and get in somewhere where they can have these aggressive fights, because they were landing in Jurassic and now they're trying to rotate around and find anybody to start to have at least a safe and smart engagement with. And they have managed to come across quite a few teams, but do they have the positioning? Do they have the loot and the armor for it? That's a totally different story.
Of course, as every team gets eliminated here, it'll be confirmation that they won't be going to the Esports World Cup. But I think we already knew that with how Red Dragon have been performing so far today, as Team Kana, who were in second place earlier, are now in a fight and hope they can find a chance to maybe they could have one of those huge games to send themselves up towards the top of the leaderboard, albeit unlikely, but good damage that was initially done there. As Jay Savage is going to be the last remaining player, and they will just about survive that engagement.
All right, now we get a chance to take a look at Cold. Everybody on blue right now, as it was Team Bambino, who's grab cannoning away from Cold, who do technically have Red Dragon in their sights, and Team Bambino is also on top of Red Dragon. Not anymore, though, as I say that, because Team Bambino does go down to Red Dragon. They were trying to escape from Cold and end up getting taken out by Red Dragon. Miscom's in the area, but right now we might end up seeing our top two teams eventually fighting this one out.
Yeah, sadly for Cold, Red Dragon still picking up kills, getting more points and getting further away from them. It would have to be a 23 kill game for Cold at the moment, and as these squads are starting to get deleted one by one, it becomes even more unlikely. But can I say, the fact that our second closest team right now features Forrest, who is a CS legend playing in Apex Legends, hats off to that man, who apparently any game he can master, and it would have been incredible to see him compete at an Apex Legends LAN, but sadly it's looking more and more likely like Red Dragon are going to be holding that spot. But it is Cold and Red Dragon who are currently posturing up against each other over towards Cito, as other teams at the moment are just holding Cascade Falls in the surrounding spots.
We've got DN, and I think they might be near Team Carlos potentially in this general vicinity, with a little bit of back and forth. Meanwhile, you can see in the kill feed, we've got Nox coming out still across our squads. Team K-Swinny pushing up on Atlas and seeing if they can get themselves some points on the board. DN holding this low ground, those Watson fences being very helpful for owning this space right now, as they're trying to figure out just how many teams are around them and if they want to make this push. It looks like they do want to get aggressive here. They know that there's people on that second floor inside this building, and they're going to go for it.
They are. Again, every team knows they have to be aggressive. They have to go for these fights. They have to take this advantage when it's proposed in front of them. But sadly, you can be as aggressive as you like, but some teams, when they retreat, your aggression just amounts to nothing, as it's going to be up the hill goes their competitors. And we're down now to 13 squads. And sadly, the more squads that fall, the less kills that become available to Cold, and it's Red Dragon still being aggressive. They're now pushing up, looking to try and pick up extra KP, extra points at the top of this leaderboard, but they have lost Taskmaster. This would be Cold's hope that Red Dragon at least get eliminated to give them even the slightest chance of finding a big kill victory. The zone is starting to close in and will bring in Team Thorfinn to join this fight as well, so Red Dragon certainly in a sticky position.
This could be a third-party opportunity for Team Thorfinn. Red Dragon fully lose Taskmaster, and they're down to an injured duo now in the crosshairs of Team Miscom, with Thorfinn following right behind. Will that open up an opportunity for Red Dragon to escape, or will it just be more damage coming their way? You can see just how low Prestis is right now. Red Dragon opting to back off, knowing that that was going to be a little bit tough to try and salvage, but they rotate straight into the arms of more players. They are able to stave them off, but just barely with their health so low. And knowing that there are still teams in the area, will Team Phoenix push up behind them? Will Thorfinn push up to their front? This is a tough spot for Red Dragon.
And I'm sure a lot of these teams, if they knew they were fighting Red Dragon, would perhaps be a little bit more aggressive. But if you're new to watching Apex Legends, there's anonymous mode. You can't see necessarily who you are fighting in the kill feed. A lot of these teams do learn which skins they're going up against, which legends they go up against. Alas, not going to be the case here, as Red Dragon are just about able to survive as a 2, as they continue to do what they need to do. Survive, get as much placement points as possible, and push Cold even further away from that ticket to the Esports World Cup. Team Thorfinn are going to continue to get aggressive and probably will shadow them. Johnny Cash comes down just to try and keep them at bay here, but sadly, it's not going to hit any of them.
I respect this, though, this hunt attempt out of Team Thorfinn. They're just a little bit too far behind with that redeploy coming out of Red Dragon. That's definitely going to create some space for them, even if they take a little bit of damage while in the sky. They'll break that balloon on the back end so no one can follow them. And then they might be able to stabilize just a bit here. There will be other squads in the area. That's Team Phoenix that they are doing insane amounts of damage onto as they try to get away in that Trident, at least keeping Team Phoenix away, who's also down to a duo. And Red Dragon somehow live long enough, reposition, and get the respawn. They'll be back up to a 3.
Is there no one else at this point that can take down Red Dragon? Like a phoenix from the ashes, Taskmaster spawns once more to compete in this lobby. And will I have to say, I can't wait to see Taskmaster at LAN, as again, looking incredibly likely that it's going to be Red Dragon competing at the Esports World Cup. But still, for Cold, there are still enough players in this lobby for them to catch up. Theoretically, they'd have to shut down Red Dragon ASAP and kill pretty much the rest of the lobby. Team K-Switty are going to be approaching from this eastern side at the moment, but there's a lot of teams in their way.
Well, you can see everything's popping off as Team Thorfinn was trying to hunt down Red Dragon. They end up coming across a totally different squad. It was Team Miskim, and they take them out, but now they're stuck in a little bit of a choke here. It's Cold finally starting to make a move in with that aggression, seeing if they can get the kills they need.
Don't hunt the dragon is what you should learn, but Cold, they have to start hunting. They have to start looking for kills to give them any sort of chance and hope to get to the Esports World Cup. But now they have been found out. They have been spotted as they try to make their way through to get aggressive, as we thought. And now, sadly, they're going to have their backs against the wall a little bit here on this southwest side. They are going to be able to get inside, though. They did manage to kind of control this building a little bit earlier. I mean, it's been a great attempt from Cold to get to the Esports World Cup here today. But sadly, with only one position available, and with Red Dragon winning 3 of the 6 games already, even before match 6, it's so difficult to keep up with that kind of consistency in Apex Legends.
You know, that was a valiant effort on behalf of Cold. I think that was the right time to try to third party. There were just so many other teams in the area that they couldn't stay in the choke long enough to really get the results they were looking for. They do have a decent position. Like you said, they were able to kind of nail down that building ahead of time with all of their Watson fences and the Jenny, so that they could at least retreat back to a home base and get themselves stabilized, preparing for the next wave of fights. And they do have Stay Healthy and Team Carlos right ahead of them to try and start getting some KP. But the more time goes on, the more these teams start collapsing and running into each other and fighting each other, and not Cold. If we're not getting that KP on the board, with Red Dragon still being up and also getting those kills and additional placement points as teams are falling, it's looking almost 100% certain that we are going to be seeing Red Dragon. And the way they have played today, it could not be any more deserving.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance Cold could win this game from the position they find themselves in, for sure, but it's just not going to be enough KP to catch Red Dragon, especially with Red Dragon still alive. You could see the top of your screen, there's a ticker going by with the live amount of points that Red Dragon are ahead of Cold, and I think, if I read it correctly, it was around 38. Yeah, 38 between Red Dragon and Cold at the moment. Team Kiner, they've pushed themselves into second temporarily, but there's just such a big gap now. Red Dragon would have to be eliminated ASAP, and Cold would have to kill everyone else in the lobby. It's been an incredible day from Red Dragon. And yes, we're not playing match point, so you're not going to get necessarily the big exciting ending that we've seen in the ALGS, but we had that in match 5, that early fight in Climatizer from Red Dragon, winning that off drop against the second place team, then going on to dominate that game and win their 3rd map. That's what sent them really to the Esports World Cup. As now Team Kiner, the team who is in 2nd place, who wants to get aggressive, wants to try and push the narrative of maybe qualifying themselves, are still getting kills, but is it going to be enough?
You know, Team Kiner was another squad that had a really phenomenal performance on the day. Once they kind of got into their rhythm, you can see them still battling it out absolutely savagely. Team Kiner down to just 1. Jay Savage, once again in a clutch situation, has been playing so well for the team, able to clean up Cybercats, and might be able to also not stick the heel and just go out after a really, really solid fight.
And sadly, that will be confirmation of Team Kiner not qualifying for the Esports World Cup, of course. Exiting as Red Dragon now put even more points on the board with placement. They find themselves on 81 as they are closing in on what could be, you know, we talk about history in Apex Legends, right? And the first time that Apex Legends is featured in the Esports World Cup, but as the competition grows and continues, we might look back at what Red Dragon have achieved here in these qualifiers. 3 victories, maybe with the chance of even getting 4 here. They could start to maybe be at the very beginning of said history and the future of the Esports World Cup.
Absolutely. We'll have to see if they want to close it out in the same fashion that they've been playing all day. You also notice Team Thorfinn trapped on the left side of that mountainside, just kind of biding their time. Hopefully they have a redeploy. They're gonna have to figure out how they want to handle taking that next ring's worth of damage. Meanwhile, Team K-Swinny trying to make a push inside this building here, and they're a team that just could not catch a break all day. They've been dealing with contests. They've had rough starts on the southern side of every single one of their maps, and now they're trying to go and get their comeuppance here, able to clear out, stay healthy, and now they own this building with a little bit additional loot to their name. Cold, actually one of the teams that's right across the way from them. This could be a potential fight that Cold is looking for, or they might want to move up to the safety of the next ring and maybe just get a win on the board for the day for themselves.
I mean, one thing that certainly does have me excited for is the future of a lot of these teams in the EMEA region and what they will do in Apex Legends and how they will compete and continue to grow against the other regions. As now Red Dragon, they're still alive, they are still breathing fire, and they are still annihilating the competition. 5 teams now remain. Can Red Dragon make it 4 matches, 4 wins out of 6, which would be unbelievable, really, but they are up against it now here in this fight.
They were able to deal with Team Thorfinn, who did have that balloon for the redeploy, and take them out, but then DN heard the action and pushed up, trying to go for the third party. They've now lost Taskmaster, and they're down to just 2, seeing if maybe you can get a bat here for the Bloodhound, and they might be able to actually stabilize, because I think Team Carlos is trying to see if they can third party behind DN.
And elsewhere, Team Cold are eliminated, and we have official confirmation, if it wasn't already there, that Red Dragon will be going to the Esports World Cup. But can they go there with a bit of punctuation here with another victory? They're back up to a full 3. They're back up to health. They're back up to being aggressive, and they are full sending onto this team. They get the first knock. They are unstoppable at the moment. They're into the top 3 again. This could be a 4th victory.
Team Carlos absolutely saved their life there, giving them time to get back up to a full 3, re-stabilize, and make that push. Team Carlos escaping with 1, but now Team K-Swinny try their hand yet again, pushing against Red Dragon. We saw what happened in the last match. It didn't go well for Team K-Swinny. They're now down to 2, with K-Swinny barely alive on the Bangalore as they're trying to survive up against Red Dragon. Will this be the opportunity for the solo on Team Carlos to spoil? Red Dragon are eliminated. Team K-Swinny are able to shut down the beasts of the lobby and will be able to close out their Esports World Qualifier run on a win.
Well, a chance for K-Swinny to have a magic moment then in the final circle here. Has a Kraber. We've seen this before play out. Goes for the no-scope, doesn't quite get it, and doesn't get the finish. It's Team Carlos who get the victory here in match 6. But it will be Red Dragon who are heading to Riyadh and are heading to the Esports World Cup.
K-Swinny just made a liar of me. K-Swinny just made a liar of me by going for those Kraber shots at the end. Went for style, and I respect it. But it was Team Carlos, a squad who also had a really solid performance here today that closed out the day in match number 6. That was a really good way for some of the teams to at least end their performance. Like we had mentioned before, Team K-Swinny was really struggling so far throughout the day. So to at least have that strong performance at the end. And Team Carlos also had been doing well in their matches. And so it was nice for them to at least kind of get that feather in their cap at the end of it all. But the belle of the ball is Red Dragon. And even going out in 3rd place, they were still absolutely electric all day.
I mean, the fact they still got 3rd place in that game was pretty unbelievable with the amount of things they had to fight up against. We can watch that final circle and see how it did play out in the end. I thought that somehow Red Dragon were going to even stop K-Swinny's side from pushing them, because even though K-Swinny's side approached with full reds whilst Red Dragon was still healing, Red Dragon even almost won this 3v3. Sadly putting Oz in a 1 versus 2, I think, just trying to knuckle cluster and get any sort of damage in those final moments to clean up the final pieces, but then it probably would have gone in favor of Team Carlos anyway. The knockdown shields, again, being a nuisance and being the detriment to Oz in this particular scenario. But Red Dragon, they would have been dying in 3rd place, but celebrating their victory overall of going to the Esports World Cup. For K-Swinny, it was a chance to, again, put on a show, have a montage moment, go for the no-scope. I've seen him do it. It's happened. It's in all the highlight reels for the ALGS. Sadly, against Young Hong Kong, it didn't happen on this occasion, and the flatline was too strong. And it will be Team Carlos who get the victory. But this is how everything looks after that game in match 6. Team K-Swinny glitter 20 points in the end.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It was the comeback that they were long awaiting all day today. So very, very strong performance out of Team K-Swinny, but I'm already looking 9 kills out of Red Dragon. To be fair, 10 out of Team Kiner, and that was another squad that we were talking about all day today. They were just an aggressive force, which at the end of this format is what was really beneficial for our teams. Take a look at the rest of the squads, where they all shook out. 5 kills onto Miscom, probably a result of, once again, all of that chaos that happened early on in the mill with everybody fighting for that POI. But no matter what happened at the end of the day, as we see it in writing, finally, Red Dragon, 90 points in those 6 matches, 46 kills. Absolutely incredible performance.
It wasn't even close in the end, was it? Sadly, you know, the likes of Cold, the likes of Kiner, if they had played the game as they wanted to, they probably could have finished 2nd, they could have finished 3rd, but they had to get aggressive just to have even the slightest hopes of catching up Red Dragon. So really, anything under 2nd is hard to get any kind of indication of who really deserved 2nd place, because it was so manipulated by Red Dragon. The biggest story, Red Dragon, they're going to the Esports World Cup. The only one team that qualified from EMEA, because it was only 1 spot, alongside the 8 invited squads from the ALGS, means that they will be a true competitor and a very dangerous competitor at the Esports World Cup.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting competition, to be sure. So make sure you guys are also marking your calendars for everything. Okay, you've seen a few times when we have our graphics popping up. The entire competition runs from July 3rd to August 25th. But if you're wondering when Apex is happening, that's August 1st to August 4th. Okay, so if you want to follow along with your favorite Apex teams, or even your favorite orgs, as we also talked about quite a few times, there's more than just the 1 game competition. This is 8 weeks, 20 titles, $60 million on the line. There's going to be so much esports all summer long at the Esports World Cup that you're going to want to be keeping up with. So you can also follow us on social media at ESWCGG. That's on X, and you can watch along specifically for Apex at twitch.tv/EWC_Apex. That's all the information you will need. Hashtags, use them on social media. Tell us your thoughts on how everything went today, or how you think it's going to go over the summer. And Dan, I want to get your final thoughts on what we saw here today.
Just demolition from Red Dragon. I think that they are going to be a team that can definitely threaten to win the entire competition with how they played here today. If they find any form similar to that, then they are certainly a team to watch. But of course, the best teams in the world will be competing at the Esports World Cup. So we'll have to see how they did, but I'm very proud of what they achieved today.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see what happens on that international stage. We're going to have so many good teams and players competing that it's going to be an absolute insane experience. So hopefully everybody at home is excited for it as well. As always, a huge thank you to all of our players for participating here today, all of you at home for watching alongside us, and everybody behind the scenes for making this whole thing possible. We'll see you guys in August.